particularly in the sunshine. Temperatures getting into the mid or even high teens in and around the London area. Should be a fine day on the Murray Firth with those southerly winds bringing fine conditions here. But in the far northwest, there will be a weather front that's likely to bring cloud and some rain at times through the day across the Western Isles, that trickling towards the west coast come evening time. We'll also see some of that rain just creeping towards County Fermanagh, but again, most of the day, much of Northern Ireland dry and cloudy. North Wales seeing some breaks in the cloud, but the cloud thickening across the southwest, and here just a small chance of 1 or 2 late showers. Increasingly through this evening, though, the threat of more showery rain coming up across southwest England, into South Wales and across Northern Ireland. Could be quite heavy in places as this rain band spreads further north as we go through the night. Much of the east and most of Scotland will stay dry overnight, clearer skies, allowing temperatures to dip down to single figures across the far northeast, but for most another pretty mild night with double digits to start Friday. We are going to start with a lot of cloud, and we will see some outbreaks of rain. Some uncertainty about how quickly this band of rain progresses tomorrow, but there could be some heavy showers around, particularly Northern Ireland, parts of Wales, and eventually creeping up into Northern England. But brighter skies should follow down to the south and west, and again, much of Scotland dry. And again, for most of us, temperatures in the mid-teens. Bye for now.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win a whopping £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having £3,000 each month for an entire year. Extra cash in your bank account that you can do whatever you like with. Make sure you don't miss out. Get your entry in now. Just one entry could make you the winner. For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close 5 PM this Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 12 o'clock on Thursday, the 24th of October. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
reparation demands. Rebellious Caribbean leaders are set to force slavery reparations on the Commonwealth Summit agenda. The Bahamas Foreign Minister expects Starmer and David Lammy to U-turn, thanks to what they've said in the past.
And we're going to put that reparations question to none other than Nigel Farage, plus his new push to steal councillors away from the Conservative Party. Will it work?
Plus, should Jeremy Corbyn, Diane Abbott and Sadiq Khan apologise for their public sympathy towards the violent gang leader Chris Carber after the firearms officer Martin Blake was found not guilty of his killing?
And up in smoke, disposable vapes will be banned from June next year. Is this a necessary move, or could this push more people back to smoking?
And this year's Royal British Legion Poppy Appeal has officially launched today. We're wearing our poppies. But does everyone know the importance of this appeal? We're asking whether the young still take pride in wearing the poppy.
Well, yes, I mean, this question of reparations just is not going away. Keir Starmer sending out his cabinet ministers to say, absolutely not, this isn't on the table, but those pesky Commonwealth leaders certainly want it to be.
And the problem is, as we heard from the Foreign Minister of the Bahamas this morning, he's pointing to what David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, said only a few years ago about reparations for Caribbean communities. He's pointing to the work that Keir Starmer did as an international human rights lawyer, particularly in the Caribbean. He's pointing to the apology of the Anglican Church and the Archbishop of Canterbury over issues relating to slavery. When you add all of this up, what all of these politicians have said in the previous few years, perhaps it's no wonder that these countries are now asking for our money.
And could the government cede? Could they cede to their demands? I mean, you know, a lot of the backbenchers in the Labour Party certainly would like it. But also, this question of banning disposable vapes, well, it's no longer a question. Apparently, it's going to come into force in next June. I like to dabble in a bit of vaping. And it is not good. It is not good. These little pesky plastic things with their fruity tastes are so addictive, Tom. I've tried to stop so many times. But they're just so addictive, and I never was even a smoker.
This is a personal struggle for you.
It's a bit of a personal struggle, yes. I mean, it's not the biggest personal struggle, but I'm sure there are people at home who feel exactly the same way. Yes, it's better for you than smoking normal cigarettes, sure. But it's not good to be so addicted to a tiny little piece of plastic. Tiny little piece. You know, there was one point where I had it, you know, under my pillow.
Really?
Yeah. You know, when you wake up...
You're hoping that the vape fairy
when you go to
come
sleep,
along and
you know, it's a bit...
£1 coin.
It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? I mean, a little tutti-frutti, little vape in your mouth all the time.
On the other hand, there are so many... smokers who found these things so useful because there's so much less harmful.
I bet you they're vaping more than they ever smoked before.
But that doesn't matter because they're not going to cause. It's not going to cause lung cancer.
I don't know. I think my sinuses are feeling a bit more blocked than they used to be.
No. I worry that if we were to go further with banning vapes, people would just go back to smoking.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, that nicotine, it's a devil. Let us know your thoughts, gbnews.com/your say on the reparations question and on disposable vapes if you happen to be a vaper. Anyway, it's your headlines with Sam Francis.
Very good afternoon to you. 3 minutes past 12. Let's start with that story on disposable vapes and the announcement from the government confirming a ban on the devices from June of next year. Figures suggest nearly 5 million single-use vapes are thrown away weekly. And there's also concern over the impact on children's health. However, critics claim the ban will only drive illegal sales, with the Vaping Industry Association warning people will just continue to use disposable vapes from the black market. Devolved governments are expected to introduce similar bans around the same time next year. Sir Keir Starmer has been told by Commonwealth leaders he must come to the table at their summit in Samoa tomorrow to discuss reparations for the ill effects of slavery. Caribbean countries have been pressing for some time for reparations, with a report last year estimating the UK owes over £18 trillion. The Bahamas Foreign Minister says justice, though, is about more than money, rather. It's about addressing the lasting impact of slavery. However, Downing Street says the issue isn't on the official agenda. Meanwhile, King Charles is also attending the summit, which begins on Friday. A 60-year-old woman is being questioned on suspicion of manslaughter after 3 people died at a care home in Dorset. Police are now investigating carbon monoxide poisoning as a possible cause after Gainsborough care home residents were evacuated. 7 people were taken to hospital and 40 others moved to safety during the early Wednesday morning emergency. Health and safety officials have now arrived at the scene with a police cordon still in place. The deaths are being treated by police as unexplained, and tributes are pouring in from the local community. Nearly 300 migrants, some 292 people in fact, arrived in the UK after crossing the English Channel yesterday. That was the same day that 3 people sadly died when their boat sank. The French Coast Guard rescued 48 others off the coast of Calais after spotting a life jacket floating in the water. Refugee organisations are calling for safer alternatives to the dangerous crossings where deaths have, they say, become appallingly regular. So far this year, nearly 29,000 people have made the journey. That's up 9% on 2023. The Home Office, though, says they'll stop at nothing to dismantle the people smuggling gangs. The government says it will consider EU proposals on a youth mobility scheme, but that freedom of movement will not return. It comes after a challenge from the Liberal Democrats, who are calling for more opportunities for young people and stronger ties with Europe. However, Paymaster General Nick Thomas-Symonds told MPs the government won't be providing a running commentary on any negotiations. Shoplifting offences in England and Wales have hit a 20-year high, with nearly 470,000 incidents recorded by police in the year to June 2024. That's a 29% jump on the previous year, according to the Office for National Statistics. The rise follows major retailers warning of the growing cost of theft and violence towards shop workers. In response, the government says it plans to make assaulting a shop worker a specific criminal offence. Retailers say they're hopeful that new measures announced in the King's speech will help police to prosecute offenders more effectively. Bereaved families of those who died in the infected blood scandal are now eligible for compensation after decades of waiting. The government's made the announcement offering an interim payment of £100,000. But critics say the system is fiendishly complicated and legal assistance may be needed. More than 30,000 people were infected with hepatitis C, HIV and other viruses during NHS blood transfusions between the 1970s and early 1990s, with 3,000 people losing their lives. Campaigners have welcomed the announcement of payments but demand more clarity on the full compensation scheme. The government, though, says it is working to deliver life-changing sums to those affected. And finally, before I hand back to Tom and Emily, let's just bring you an update on the situation in the Middle East. We've heard in the last hour or so that 16 people, including, sadly, children, have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school in Gaza. That is according to local officials. These are the latest pictures into us. In fact, that is the incorrect footage. Let's just pull away from that. The school in the Nuseirat refugee camp was being used as a shelter for displaced families when that strike hit. I believe that those pictures, in fact, were slightly too distressing to show to you, so we had to cut away from them. Israel has not yet commented on the situation, but the military has previously said it is targeting Hamas militants hiding among civilians. It, of course, comes after months of Israeli strikes on schools turned shelters in the region. That's the latest from me for now. Plenty more coming up this afternoon. Now, though, it's back to Tom and Emily.
Right, good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 12, and to our top story, Commonwealth heads of governments are set to defy the UK government by demanding slavery reparations at a leaders' summit today.
Well, the Prime Minister insists calls for reparations are not on the meeting's agenda today, saying he would rather focus on current challenges like climate change.
But reports are reparations are definitely on the draft communiqué, and Bahamian Foreign Affairs Minister Frederick Mitchell says it is only a matter of time before Sir Keir changes his position, thanks to what he and the Foreign Secretary David Lammy have said in the past.
It seems unusual to us because you've got the Labour Party in power And this, we thought, was something that the Conservative Party in the UK would be the progenitor of, and that Labour would certainly change its position on this. And particularly since you have an Afro-British man as the Foreign Secretary, to put him in a position where he's advancing a position that no reparations, no discussion on reparations. So I think a very frank conversation has to be had on this. Given Sir Keir's work before he became Prime Minister, given Mr. Lamy's position before he got this job that he has now, they bring their individual consciences to this job, and I think eventually they'll come around to the position.
So that's the Foreign Minister of the Bahamas, Frederick Mitchell, saying there, essentially, that he thinks he can convince them. He thinks he can convince David Lammy and Keir Starmer precisely because of what they've said in the past. Should we have a quick look at what David Lammy has said in the past? In a second, we will.
As Caribbean people, we are not going to forget our history. We don't just want to hear an apology, we want reparation.
I can sort of understand where the Bahamian Foreign Minister is coming from, where Frederick Mitchell is coming from. If you stood there and listened to David Lammy just a few years ago saying Caribbean people deserve reparations, and now as Foreign Secretary he's in a position to perhaps grant such reparations, stands to reason why they're asking for them.
I just wonder if there's a bit of a difference between perhaps what the government are trying to project to us, the British public, the media around saying absolutely not, reparations aren't on the table, and what they might be saying in private conversations with some of these Caribbean leaders. Could there be a little bit of a difference there? Well, should we speak to GB News political editor Christopher Hope about all this? Christopher, on the one hand, the government, the Prime Minister, is saying absolutely not, reparations aren't on the table, but actually, this is going to be pushed onto the agenda today.
Yes, afternoon, Tom and Emily. That's right, it really will be. The word is it will be in the communiqué prepared by the CHOGM leaders.
Yep, no,
Can you hear me now?
Sorry, Christopher, do go on.
Sorry, the word is this. The words in the communiqué to be agreed on Saturday at the end of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting will include some language on encouraging getting towards some kind of a deal on reparations or going towards a conversation about it. And it's hard not to be sympathetic, I think, to the Bahamian Foreign Minister, Frederick Mitchell. He's looked at simply what David Lammy said in the past. He says the time for apologies is over. They want reparations. Back in 2018, 2019, you've heard from Keir Starmer has a record here of being a human rights lawyer. They're looking at the change of the caste list running this country and responding to that. I mean, the sums wanted are astronomical, £200 billion up to, I think it's 17 trillion or 18 trillion pounds were they to get there. It's a lot of money. The government, for its part, wants to look forward. Sir Keir Starmer says he wants to focus on where next and is keen to talk about issues of climate change with the Commonwealth Heads of Government. But it's there aren't many things which divide the Commonwealth, but this is one, I think, where you'll have maybe Australia and the UK, Canada on one side of the fence against the other part of the Commonwealth. And it could be quite an issue going forward. And I can't remember such a possibly divisive issue coming up before the Commonwealth since maybe South Africa was not part of the Commonwealth back in the 80s over apartheid. That's the kind of status we're going towards, and what the King thinks of this, well, we don't know.
No, it is stunning that this has become such a focal issue this year as opposed to any other year, creating this big schism and perhaps upending what should be a friendly Commonwealth summit. As you say, Chris, £18.8 trillion could be on the line here. It all comes from a document put together by the University of the West Indies and the American Society of International Law's second symposium on reparations under international law. That was put together last June. It's interesting that this is based on quantifying the lack of payment for slaves, putting a price on each slave that was transported across the Atlantic, and then compounding the interest on that over the course of 200 or 300 years. It's hard to see how this sort of thing stacks up, because, of course, £18.8 trillion, that's significantly more than all of the money in the United Kingdom. The UK economy is about £2.7 trillion. I mean, this is just fictitious money.
Well, it's a figure, isn't it? Now, let's look at the language, Tom, of this communiqué at the weekend. They are saying that the heads of government, noting calls for discussions on reparatory justice with regard to the transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans and chattel enslavement, agree the time has come for a meaningful, truthful and respectful conversation towards forging a common future based on equity. Maybe what that maybe the language might be what may be decided here is to take forward what that number is, as you say, the compound interest based on a debt from the 1830s and before that is a huge number. I am struck though by the fact that when the UK government took out a loan to pay off the slavers for lands they owned in the West Indies and elsewhere, that loan wasn't paid back finally until 2015. So although it might feel like a long time ago, in a sense, it was still being that debt to slave-owning families was still being paid off by taxpayers right up until the end of the Cameroon government. So it says something, I think, that although it is a long time ago, is quite recent too in the kind of long view of history. But it will open up other people to say, well, what about us? I mean, people say about the Catholics, they had a hard time in British history. They had lands taken away by King Henry VIII. It goes on. There are other people who say, well, if we deal with the slavery issue and the reparations there are other communities too who maybe need money too. So where you draw the line is a bigger issue. But this, I think, I've never seen the Commonwealth appear to be so divided on an issue. I think this may be an issue going forward, certainly beyond Saturday when it's due to end in Samoa.
Yeah, Chris, you bring up the Catholics. I mean, these sorts of questions really open up where is there a dividing line. I've been looking at debts that we might owe particularly over this issue of compounding interest. The longer ago that money moved hands, of course, the more it would now cost. If we go back to 1345, Edward III took out, there he is, Edward III. He took out a loan of 1.5 million silver florins from the banks of Florence. Now, he never paid that back. There the florins are. They're gorgeous coins. But sadly, Edward III, in the middle of the 100 Years' War, never paid back this debt. If we compound interest with 2.5%, that's the amount that the Caribbean countries want to compound their presumed debt, that would come to £143 trillion that the UK owes to Italy. That's more money than there is in the entire world.
Yes, Tom, and that's probably why there needs to be a conversation about what's being asked for. I mean, we do have... our country is a very generous donor on aid money. Maybe some of that money could be repurposed towards it. That might be a better political solution for the government, possibly. I heard Emily there laughing. I mean, I don't know. There is a way of doing this, but...
No, Christopher, I'm just laughing because one of the headlines today is Keir Starmer pleading with rich people and wealth creators and investors not to flee the country. Could it be that we need this money to go to slavery reparations?
Well, I just think we need... there's a hurt out in the Caribbean, and one shouldn't be dismissive of that, and we are not being dismissive of that. But the figures being talked about are eye-watering. The Church of England is putting aside, I think, £100 million of its money. It's got £3 billion, I think, under investment. They've got money they can put forward towards it. But it is a question, I think, for the country, and maybe this might start a debate where we might get more of a reasonable conversation after this.
I mean, it's staggering, given how much this country did to end the practice of slavery. For 100 years after the British ended slavery, the Brazilians were doing slavery, the Africans were doing slavery. For 60 years after we ended slavery, the Americans were doing slavery. For decades, the French were, the Germans were. The Belgians were doing it horrifically. I mean, why is it always Britain?
It's because we're a soft touch. We're soft touch. There are so many people in this country who say, yes, absolutely.
There's a question that we put last week on GB News' debate with the two leaders. Of course, you might expect the Tory party's leadership to be against this, but I think Kemi Badenoch was so interesting because she was saying it's just ridiculous the way this country often just beats itself up about its history, and she referenced those 2,000 members of the Royal Navy who died putting an end to slavery around the world in the mid to late 19th century and the early part of the 19th century too. And she is saying, you know, it's ridiculous. Stand tall, be tall. I think part of the appeal of Kemi Badenoch to party members, the Tory party members, is that she's saying stop apologising for so much that you believe in. If you believe and you're proud of the Commonwealth and the British Empire and the good that those things have done and are doing, then say so. And it takes a black woman to say that, I think, and that's quite interesting.
It's very, very interesting. Of course, when Gordon Brown went over to meet President Obama in 2008 or 9, the gift he gave Obama was a pen set made out of the wood of one of those Royal Navy ships that went across the Atlantic, putting an end to the slave trade, one of those dedicated ships. In return, he got 7 DVDs that couldn't be played in the United Kingdom. But perhaps that says more about the special relationship between Obama and Gordon Brown. Chris, stay there for us. We know you're going to be joined by Nigel Farage in the next few minutes. We will be back to you after a very short break. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Of course, lots more coming up on the show. Stay with us for an exclusive interview with Nigel Farage.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Some controversial film news. Someone has hired an actor who's white. What the hell is going on?
Let me just fix my hair. Let me just come on. So, Wuthering Heights film stirs controversy after white actor, he's white, chosen to play Heathcliff.
Is that your Humza Yousaf impersonator?
That is, yes, that's my Chinese accent. Experts have gone, oh no, there's a lot of, in recent years, he's definitely black or mixed race because he was found in Liverpool. And as you know, everybody in Liverpool is black or mixed race.
No, I mean, have you read the novel?
God, no.
Right, well, I have. And the novel itself does say, quite explicitly, that he is dark-skinned. Yeah. That the implication is that he's of Romani origin. So he wouldn't be whiter than white, you know. So, I mean...
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that casting... But on the other hand...
This guy's Spanish. His origin's Spanish.
You remember when there was a black Anne Boleyn for a Channel 5 miniseries? That seems to be more egregious, because, I tell you what, Anne Boleyn definitely wasn't black.
You racist. No, I almost feel sorry in this story because you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't now. Because if they'd have, it's not like he's a bit of an anti-hero, right? It's not like a good all-round.
He's not a good guy.
So if you go, right, we definitely need to cast someone black for this. What? Why are you picking just black people to play someone with so many character flaws? Or you go, why?
Like they did with Darth Vader.
Yes, that's right.
He was played by the Green Cross Code Man. Okay. Just the voice was done by...
That's true. Yeah. Yes, it was the Green Cross Code Man. I wonder what they were saying there.
Have you ever seen the videos of the original audio of Star Wars?
No.
So you've got... I can't remember his name, but you've got the Green Cross Code Man going like, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Yeah. No, Luke, I am your father.
They should have left it as it was.
This is the difference to me. We're talking about Star Wars. You're like, oh, have you read Bronte, Wuthering, whatever?
She only wrote one novel, Josh. You could... do with the courtesy of reading it.
I'll read it straight after I finish your one.
And it's actually brilliant.
The People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+ and on the GB News app. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with GB News Radio. We are the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is 24 minutes past 12. Now, the sale of disposable vapes will be banned in England and Wales from June next year. That's confirmed by the government today.
Yes, this is a big step. The new legislation is intended to prevent environmental damage and also protect children's health. But industry leaders have warned it could fuel a rise in illegal sales on the black market.
Protect children. It's already illegal to sell a vape to children. Just enforce the current
Still doing it though, aren't they?
Well, the ban comes as a shocking recent NHS England survey revealed that a quarter of 11 to 15-year-olds had tried vaping, while 1 in 10 do it regularly.
OK, well, let's speak to the Director General of UK Vaping Industry Association, John Dunn. A quarter of 11 to 15-year-olds trying vapes. Most of them will become addicted, won't they?
Well, this is one of the reasons why, as an association, we've been calling on the government to bring in licensing for vape retailers, for instance, to make sure that those retailers have robust age verification processes in place. And we also want to see the fines raised to a minimum of £10,000 per instance for those people caught selling to minors. We think this is a huge issue. But the problem is, as your presenter pointed out, it is already illegal for anybody under the age of 18 to be sold a vape in this country. But those laws are not being enforced. So I don't see how bringing in another law that we probably can't enforce as well is going to solve that situation.
And what about adults, though, John? I mean, I do use disposable vapes, and very, very quickly, I not only was using them as a smoker would, but literally constantly vaping. They are so addictive. And I would normally be against, bans like this. I'm not an authoritarian. I'm quite laissez-faire with stuff like this. I don't like the idea of the government deciding what adults do. But these things are vicious. They're so addictive, John.
Well, they're also very expensive to use. Like, ideally, somebody who's vaping should be moving quite quickly into a product that's refillable, for instance. It takes a little bit more practice, a little bit more work, but that's better for the environment, and it is better for your pocket as well. But where these products come into play is for people, for instance, that have dexterity issues, people that have mental health issues, tend to like simple devices that are easy to use. But the big issue here is keeping these out of the hands of young people, but also discouraging people who don't vape, for instance, from taking it up in the first place. If you don't smoke, you shouldn't be vaping at all.
Now, this ban has been in the offing for quite some time. The previous government was mulling over it. It sort of got lost around the general election time, and this government's picked it up. I've noticed on the market there are now these sort of hybrid vapes that seem to be part disposable, or a large chunk of them disposable, but technically count as non-disposable. Do you know the sort of vapes that I mean? It seems that the market's already adapting, and perhaps this ban won't actually do all that much, because you have these sort of semi-disposable options that have already been invented.
Yeah, so what the government has said is that disposable vape products are defined as a product that is not rechargeable, that's not refillable, and that the coil cannot be changed. So what you're seeing is the market already developing the products in anticipation that this was going to happen in April 1st. Now it's June 1st. But the main issue I have with the ban is the fact that the government is not banning the importation of these products that they're banning for sale. So to us, that's going to cause a huge black market. We're already seeing it happening with vapes, for instance, that have too much nicotine, and vapes that are too large to be sold in this country, which are, again, legal to be imported, but shouldn't be on sale here in the UK. But I can guarantee you, I'm going to a vape show later on today, and tomorrow I will see hundreds of products that are illegal for sale in the UK, and there's nothing trading standards can do about it. It's so annoying. And this is why I met with government ministers yesterday, and I explained to them they need to sit down with the industry when they are making rules, because we know where the loopholes are and we know how to shut them down. Our market are adult smokers. And
John, just very quickly, because we're running out of time. What's actually in a vape? What's actually in a vape? Because I don't feel like it's very healthy.
So generally, it's propylene glycol, vegetable glycerin, flavoring, and that's about it, basically. But, you know, again, vapes are not 100% safe. But when you're comparing them to a cigarette, which kills 1 in 2 users, vaping is far better for you to do.
Yeah, the problem is a lot of vapers were never smokers.
Quit.
That's the problem. John Dunn, thank you very much indeed, Director General of UK Vaping Industry Association.
Fascinating to hear that distinction from the government. A disposable vape is something you can't recharge. All of the disposable vapes are just going to get a rechargeable port, and then suddenly they're legal.
Yeah.
Well, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's programme.
Yeah, we're going to be speaking to Nigel Farage, putting this question of reparations to him. I'm sure he'll have a lot to say on that.
Absolutely. That's coming up after the news.
Very good afternoon to you. 12:30 exactly, and as we were just hearing there, the government has confirmed a ban on disposable vapes starting from June 2025 amid concerns about their impact on children's health. The announcement comes as 5 million single-use vapes are discarded each week, with their use growing over 400% from 2012 to 2023. However, critics claim the move will only drive illegal sales, with the Vaping Industry Association warning there will be a black market surge. The government's being pushed to confirm its position this afternoon on reparations for the UK's role in the slave trade. The Sir Keir Starmer faces mounting pressure from Caribbean nations at a summit he's attending in Samoa. Shadow Commons leader Chris Philp says it's wrong to ask for money for what he described as very serious sins committed hundreds of years ago. However, the Bahamas Foreign Minister says justice is about more than money. They say it's about addressing the lasting impact of slavery. The Metropolitan Police will reopen its investigation into the Wimbledon school crash that killed 2 girls and injured 12 others last summer. The driver, Claire Fremantle, was originally told no further action would be taken after it was revealed she'd suffered an epileptic seizure. However, following criticism from the families of Selina Lau and Nuria Sajjad, police have identified new lines of inquiry. Senior officers say a new team with experience in homicide cases will take over the investigation. The girls' family have welcomed the move, saying they hope all their questions will now be answered. Winchester Prison is facing possible emergency measures over very high levels of violence and rampant drug use, according to a watchdog report. Inspectors flagged weak drug testing and broken CCTV with nearly half of prisoners, saying it was easy to access illicit substances. Violence is also at an all-time high, with Winchester recording the most serious assaults against staff in England and Wales. The facility is dilapidated, the report says, with cells so unfit, inspectors questioned whether they were habitable. Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood will now produce an urgent action plan to address the failures. And news that we brought you in the last half hour or so that 16 people, including children, have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school in Gaza. That's according to local officials. The school in the Nusrat refugee camp was being used as a shelter for displaced families when the strike hit. Al-Auda Hospital says 32 others were injured. Israel, though, has not commented yet, but military has previously said it was targeting Hamas militants hiding among civilians. This latest strike, of course, comes after months of Israeli strikes on schools turned shelters in the region. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup at 1 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there, welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Dry for most of us today, but increasingly cloudy in the west, with some rain turning up later. There's a slow-moving weather front out to the west. Ahead of it, a mild southerly airflow and increasingly cloudy as that weather front approaches, but it takes most of the day to bring its rain in. Having said that, the Outer Hebrides seeing some outbreaks of rain during the afternoon, and the cloud thick enough to give a few spots elsewhere in the west. But the best of the sunshine will be through the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. Just some patchy cloud here and feeling very mild, 16 to 18 Celsius, 14 to 15 further north. But it's towards the northwest where we see the wind strengthen at times, especially western Scotland. It will be blustery through the afternoon, and we've got that rain persisting through Lewis and Harris and heading into the west of Scotland, or the rest of western Scotland, I should say, into the evening. Northern Ireland, just seeing that rain fringe upon western parts as we go through the evening, but parts of North Wales, northern England, the North Midlands, still enjoying some clear spells before the cloud does thicken overnight. The cloud will lower overnight across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast to give some fog in places by dawn, but in the west, well, that's when the rain finally moves in. It's going to be heavy and at times persistent across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest during the early hours. Could cause some issues by dawn in 1 or 2 spots, but it's drier towards the east, albeit fairly gloomy as we start off Friday. It is a mild start, but with extensive cloud cover, it's not going to be very pleasant first thing. And we've got the rain moving through Wales into the Midlands during the early afternoon, albeit petering out and turning more showery as the day progresses. Blustery in the southwest and less mild, staying mild and mostly dry in the north and east.
The latest GB News travel.
Westbound on the M62, the exit slip road is partially blocked at junction 26 for Chain Bar due to an obstruction on the road, causing slow traffic. Westbound on the M2, the exit slip road is closed at junction 2 for Rochester, whilst emergency bridge repairs continue. It's all cleared for the coastbound side of the M20, all lanes open following an earlier broken down vehicle from the 3 to junction 4. London bound in Surrey on the M3, again all lanes have reopened following an earlier broken down vehicle at junction 2, and it's easing on the eastbound side of the M56. A vehicle had a tyre change. All lanes have just reopened from A14 through to Runcorn at junction 12. And so for now, that's your very latest travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Good Afternoon Britain. Now, the Commonwealth heads of government, they're set to defy the UK government, demanding slavery reparations at a leaders' summit today.
Well, let's cross over to our political editor, Christopher Hope, who is in our Westminster studio for us. And, Christopher, I believe you've got a guest with you.
That's right. Yes, hello both, Tom and Emily. Yeah, with me now is Nigel Farage, known to us, of course, as a presenter on GB News, but also, as importantly, maybe more importantly, the leader of Reform UK. Thanks for joining us on GB News. Okay. What does Sir Keir Starmer say to Commonwealth countries wanting reparations for our slavery past?
No, never. Now, there is an argument for reparations, obviously. I think the French... during the 100 Years' War, I think the raids into Kent and Sussex, the loss of so much. I mean, where do you stop with this? Where do you stop with this? Do you go for reparations against the African black slave traders who sold the slaves to us in the first place? I mean, you know, actually, are we owed reparations from the Portuguese, Spanish, who carried on slaving, and we at a massive cost stopped them doing it? Look, if you give an inch on this, if Starmer shows any weakness on this, even though we might consider it, this will never go away. And I think I detect something going on here. The Chinese Communist Party have been doing their very best to chip away at the Commonwealth for quite some time. Barbados, Solomon Islands, etc. And I think some of these excessive demands, I think China's behind it. We must stand firm.
The numbers are huge, 200 billion to 17 trillion by some forecasts. I mean, is it worth looking at what is a number? Because these numbers are crazy. Tom Harwood was saying it's, I think, 5 to 6 times the value of the country, 17 trillion.
Look, we cannot concede anything. The past is the past is the past. We are not guilty for it. We are not responsible for it. And there are many other countries in the world who've done far worse than we've done in a whole variety of areas. So, no, and my fear, we've seen this weakness from the Archbishop of Canterbury.
100 million they're offering, aren't they, for the church?
That'll never be enough. I mean, this is like paying Medangeld. You know, if you pay the invader to go away, he comes back the next year and asks for more.
Keir Starmer has said no, not going to talk about it, but he is now looking at a division in the Commonwealth leaders, which is not normal. I haven't seen a division amongst that group since South Africa and apartheid back in the 80s, and that was a big issue, of course, for the monarchy and for the government. Do you blame them for asking for it, given what David Lammy said in the past? He's talked about we want reparations, not apologies. Keir Starmer's history as a human rights lawyer. Surely these countries, fair enough, they're seeing a change of leadership. Let's ask.
Well, if you see weakness, you know, and an opportunity for yourself, you go for it. And Lammy, they certainly see as being very weak on this. I mean, you know...
But he's a black man too, and his family was taken away at gunpoint in chains, as he told the United Nations, didn't he, in that Security Council meeting?
Yeah, and he's called for reparations in the past very publicly for Windrush victims. No. These countries see a financial opportunity. So this is it. Starmer has to put, and Lammy, have to put the tin lid on this debate for good.
We do help them with aid money. We do help the developing world with aid money. We try and support them that way. Is that a way of saying that this is a way of giving back after we took so much?
Ironically, the aid budget, of course, is falling because we're using that money to house people who, as we speak, are crossing the English Channel at a cost of 41,000 quid a year for each person.
8 million a year in hotels.
Aid is not the answer. Trade is the answer. Many of these Caribbean islands struggle to sell their goods to us because of EU rules. This is the way that Brexit should have allowed us to come closer to the Commonwealth. I'm afraid it hasn't happened.
Story of the day in the UK, aside from reparations, is Donald Trump writing he's concerned about Labour. Is it a serious letter? Is it just a bit of play? They talk about Yorktown, don't they? They talk about the history of knocking on doors of Brits in America. So is it serious? You know what he's like. He's quite mischievous, Donald Trump, isn't he?
Oh, very. Of course.
So is it a serious issue or one that's blown up?
When he's not working at McDonald's, he does a bit of politics as well. And, I mean, he is mischievous, of course he is. Look, I think it is absolutely crazy. And we can argue about the LinkedIn post, not saying they have to take time off, not saying they have to pay airfares. We can argue about the paid visit that Morgan McSweeney and others took, the Labour Party paid for them to go to the convention. Were they giving advice on targeting in elections? We can argue about all of that. What matters is that America is our most important relationship in the world, important in terms of security and intelligence sharing, important in military terms because without us, we are the linchpin between us of NATO, important because America's the biggest foreign investor in Britain and us in America. And just on the eve of an election, for a British government to be so openly supporting the opposing candidate, especially...
It's not the government, it's officials in the governing party. But the government isn't supporting anybody, is it?
It's the Labour Party, and it's a Labour government. And do you honestly think that American Republicans are going to make that distinction that you've just made there? Diplomatically, it is a stupid thing to do.
Have you talked to him recently about this? Is it something he's raised with you when you chat with him?
No. Do you know what? The last couple of weeks of campaign, I am not ringing him up for a chat. I mean, he is busy. He knows what he's got to do. He knows that it's the cost of living that really matters, that a dozen eggs now costs pretty much exactly double what it did 4 years ago. He's doing very well. He's going to win.
All eyes into Wednesday next week of the budget. What would you do to fill the £22 billion black hole that Labour claim is there?
Oh, there's not a £22 billion black hole. That's nonsense. It's 2.7 trillion. And it's growing every single year.
That's the debt figure.
Yeah, we've had 14 years of the Conservatives saying we're reducing the deficit, we're reducing the deficit. Well, they took over in the wake of the biggest bailouts of the banking industry that to that moment in time had ever been seen. So it's not surprising the deficits were reduced. We never got any honesty in 14 years about the size of a national debt. We won't get any next Wednesday. Even our interest repayments are now as much as our defence budget. And not just nationally, but individually. GDP, the measure of wealth per capita, has fallen over the last 2 years in about 6 different quarters. The more the population explodes, the poorer we get. And what I would love to see is a Chancellor saying, if we carry on with this current course, in 10, 20 years' time, you can forget pensions.
She's not the Tory party. She's not George Osborne. She won't do that.
No, you can forget pensions. You can forget anything. What we need, Chris, is a change of culture. We need to become a country that believes that work is a good thing, a country that says success is a good thing. The only way governments ever get out of economic problems is to grow their way out. I expect to see anti-small business without any growth incentives at all next week.
Yeah. Looking into next May's local elections, you've written today to 1,352 people. Who are these people?
Sitting Conservative county councillors who won their seats 4 years ago at what was peak Boris. It was the same day they won the Hartlepool by-election. Boris was going to be PM for the next 15 years, and a lot of them got elected and were surprised. Most of them, if they stand again, will lose their seats next May, partly because of the collapse of support.
So what are you offering
the Conservative Party? And what I'm saying is this: Reform are taking these elections very seriously. We will be standing candidates against them. They will almost certainly, most of them, lose their seats. But if they believe in the same values and principles that we do, very happy to consider them becoming candidates for us.
What do you think about your current candidates you've already chosen? Might be a bit peeved if you bring in Tory councillors to replace them.
The reason I've given them a couple of weeks to come back is our process of selecting begins in November. So I'm doing this before we've selected anybody. And the one thing we've got a huge number of enthusiastic people. The one thing we haven't got are many people with real experience of local government. So some of these people coming on board would help us enormously.
And how would you expect to come back and come across?
I honestly don't know.
I mean, you've got 28 Reform councillors at the moment, so would you double that figure?
There are councillors at district level and some at county coming to us every single week. I don't expect this letter to have an immediate hit, because they'll say, well, we're going to wait and see whether Kemi wins or whether Jenrick wins. But the truth is, my view is the Conservative brand is so broken that it doesn't really matter. But I'd be surprised if... We've already had, this morning one's joined already. I've got a couple on my desk to talk to who seem very keen. Let's see where we go.
It's all on you, isn't it? It's a lot of pressure on you all the time. I mean, because you're the public face of this party.
Well, without pressure, life would be very dull.
And how are they getting to you? Have you got a Telegram channel set up, a secret squirrel?
I've given them a private email address, and we will find secure means of conversation.
OK. Well, Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, and, of course, the presenter at GB News, thank you for joining us today on the channel. Back to you both in studio.
Strong stuff. Thanks very much, Chris.
Yeah, thanks to Nigel Farage as well. Now, the Poppy Appeal has launched today. We're asking whether the young still take pride in wearing the poppy. That's next. Stay with us.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, Italian wine in Britain is worth a whopping £891 million and can be described as a Prosecco phenomenon, apparently. So joining us now to tell us more about why these Italian bubbles are so popular is Ed Smith, the founder of The Emissary, a British-based Prosecco brand. Good morning, Ed.
Morning, guys.
Thank you for coming in, and you've done just as we asked. You come laden with booze and bottles and glasses.
Exactly.
So the definition of Prosecco, Tatiana, you were saying earlier, is sparkling wine that's been made in certain areas of Italy. Which areas?
Exactly. So the Prosecco region is northeast Italy. It's about sort of an hour north of Venice. Foothills of Dolomite Mountains. Very, very beautiful part of Italy. Veneto, exactly. Well done.
Show off.
I'm half Italian, so...
well, there we go. OK, you should be teaching me.
No, that's it.
So like Champagne, that has to come from the Champagne region in France. Prosecco has to come from the Prosecco region in Italy. And it's different to Champagne and other sparkling wines, like English sparkling wine, in that geography, like we just mentioned, has to come from that region in Italy. The grapes that are used are different. So Prosecco has to be at least 85% Glera, which is the native grapes of the region. And it's most importantly the method. So Champagne and English sparkling wines use the traditional method, where second fermentation, which produces the bubbles, happens in the bottle. Whereas Prosecco uses what's called the Charmat method. So the second fermentation happens in steel vats. It's a much quicker process, and that's why Prosecco is a bit more affordable.
So the Emissary is a British-based Prosecco brand.
Yeah.
So is it made in the UK?
No, made in Italy.
So that's why you can call it Prosecco?
Exactly,
Okay.
You can't call it Prosecco unless it's made in those two regions.
Great. So can we get stuck into some of these? That's the most important thing of this morning.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive?
incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's just coming up to 10 to 1. Now, the Royal British Legion's annual Poppy Appeal has been launched today.
Yes, this year the charity is highlighting the mental scars that can result from experiences in military service.
Well, joining us now is our national reporter, Charlie Peters, who was at the launch this morning. Charlie, what's the Royal British Legion saying?
Well, it's saying that they often focus on the fact that soldiers and service personnel risk life and limb for their military service, but we rarely think about, they say, the mental scars caused by service. I had a wonderful time this morning at HMS President in East London. It's a Royal Naval shore ship, so it's based on the land, and on that location they had soldiers and service personnel from all three services conducting mindfulness training and stretching to sort of ground themselves in the moment and not reflect so much on the past. I can show you some of those photos now, just on the terrace with the Tower Bridge in the background. We saw some personnel from the RAF there. That's Ruby, an 11-year-old who was supporting her father, Dan, a veteran of the Afghanistan conflict who had received some support from the Royal British Legion as part of their Poppy Appeal. And there's the cap badge of the Blues and Royals, the household cavalry there. So you see the soldiers from the army, but also sailors and personnel from the RAF involved in this. And the Poppy Appeal raised over £51 million last year, but this year they want to go even further and they want to draw in the mindfulness aspect of what it means to recuperate from soldiering. There's Ruby again, beaming at the front as she was leading that stretching and doing a great job with those service personnel as part of this. And I think we can bring you a clip of an interview that I had with Ruby bright and early this morning.
Tell us about what you've raised for the RBL and why you get involved with the campaigning.
I was 4 years old raising money for the RBL by collecting glasses in the pub. And then I went on to making paper cards, and over time it's just progressed. It feels good all the time when I'm raising money because I know it's going to go to someone who actually needs it.
Dan, you must be enormously proud of your daughter.
Oh, I'm immensely proud. I mean, I couldn't imagine to do anything like that when I was her age. Yeah, and I mean, she gets up at silly o'clock in the morning and she's working tirelessly on her crafts and puts in so much effort. It is absolutely brilliant.
Oh, that really brings it home to you that this, very often you think of poppies as if they're all about the First World War and the Second World War, as important as those are, but it's continuing that support right through. Charlie, thank you so much. We're going to cross to Jack Carson, our reporter, who is in Liverpool for us. Jack, what's it like where you are?
Around this city there are the reminders of the sacrifice that people have given both in the Great War and the Second World War as well, and conflicts more recently, particularly Afghanistan, with this year marking 10 years since the end of combat operations. And we know more than 450 military personnel lost their lives fighting in Afghanistan and other countries in that region. I mean, this is just one of the memorials here. This is the memorial to the Liverpool Cotton Association, those men who died in the First and Second World War. In the First World War, 350 men from the Liverpool Cotton Association died in that conflict. And it's also about remembering more recently those people, and particularly we've been speaking to the people that have been at the Royal British Legion Poppy launch here in Liverpool today. And it's as Charlie was talking about, remember the mental aspect of conflict, really poignant from Stuart Steele, who spoke to us a little bit earlier on. He was talking that no matter how much armoured plating a vehicle that maybe you've been in has had, it doesn't stop the mental trauma. Nothing can protect you from that mental trauma. That's a big focus for the Royal British Legion this year as they launch the Poppy Appeal today.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Jack Carson, for being there in Liverpool. As the Poppy Appeal launches, we are asking today whether young people still wear their poppy with pride. I do notice, although I do live in London, so, you know, it's its own country, really, in some ways. But I do notice that sometimes, you know, younger people aren't really wearing them, or they're making statements with the white poppy and things like this.
Do you know what? I only ever see politicians wearing the white poppy. I've never seen a normal person.
Really? I have.
Never ever seen it.
Well, maybe they're not normal. I don't know. Let us know what the Poppy Appeal means to you. Lots of you have been getting in touch with your experiences. Some of you are military veterans as well, so do get in touch. And we've got a lot more coming up on the show today as well.
Yes, we're going to be going over, of course, to Samoa. Where, of course, this Commonwealth Heads of Governments meeting is taking place. Might we really be under any obligations to provide reparations to Caribbean countries? That coming up after this.
A chilly start will give way to a lovely, warm afternoon. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Dry for most of us today, but increasingly cloudy in the west with some rain turning up later. There's a slow-moving weather front out to the west. Ahead of it, a mild southerly airflow and increasingly cloudy as that weather front approaches. But it takes most of the day to bring its rain in. Having said that, the Outer Hebrides seeing some outbreaks of rain during the afternoon, and the cloud thick enough to give a few spots elsewhere in the west. But the best of the sunshine will be through the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. Just some patchy cloud here and feeling very mild, 16 to 18 Celsius, 14 to 15 further north. But it's towards the northwest where we see the wind strengthen at times, especially western Scotland. It will be blustery through the afternoon, and we've got that rain persisting through Lewis and Harris and heading into the west of Scotland, or the rest of western Scotland, I should say, into the evening. Northern Ireland just seeing that rain fringe upon western parts as we go through the evening, but parts of North Wales, northern England, the North Midlands, still enjoying some clear spells before the cloud does thicken overnight. The cloud will lower overnight across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast to give some fog in places by dawn. But in the west, well, that's when the rain finally moves in. It's going to be heavy and at times persistent across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest during the early hours. Could cause some issues by dawn in one or two spots. But it's drier towards the east, albeit fairly gloomy as we start off Friday. It is a mild start, but with extensive cloud cover. It's not going to be very pleasant first thing. And we've got the rain moving through Wales into the Midlands during the early afternoon, albeit petering out and turning more showery as the day progresses. Blustery in the southwest and less mild, staying mild and mostly dry in the north and east.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway, and you really could be next.
Hi, I'm Angela from Wigan and I won £30,000. Winning the money enabled me to treat my children, which I've not been able to do for a while. And if I can win, anyone can win.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close 5 p.m. this Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Following the summer riots and the resurgence of far-right ideologies, the former Education Secretary told peers that reinforcing shared values is now more crucial than ever.
So we're asking this morning, should we teach British values or would it be a step backward?
Or how do you even start? To debate this now, we're joined by the Campaign for Real Education chairman, Chris McGovern, and political commentator Matthew Stadlen.
Well, I think these days, particularly in schools, it's quite fashionable to look at the negative sides of Britain's identity, particularly British history. Personally, I think I'm very proud of being British, and I think we need to be proud of our country like most other countries around the world are.
As Chris says, Matthew, lots of other countries do it. Heck, you only have to look at the United States, don't you, to see how sort of patriotic they are. Is there anything wrong in trying to instil a bit of that amongst our youth?
I'm just worried it sounds a little bit communist, Stephen, being told what it is to be British. I've got my own personal but very vague views of what British values might be: inclusivity, patience, being able to queue, decency, respect for democracy and the rule of law. But I mean, very many people will have different sets of values. Some people are racist. So are British values racist? You talked about the far right. I think we all know what the far right is. It's sort of violent, xenophobic racism. But if you have, say, I don't know, 3-4 million people in this country who might describe themselves as racist or far right, and they're British, or as British as you lot and as I am, does that mean those values get taught in schools? My worry is it's a little bit communist.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 24th of October. I'm Emily Carver.
And I'm Tom Harwood.
Reparation demands. Rebellious Caribbean leaders are set to force slavery reparations onto the Commonwealth Summit agenda. The Bahamas Foreign Minister expects Starmer and David Lammy to U-turn, thanks to what they've said in the past on the issue.
Crisis in the Channel. UK authorities are preparing for a fresh surge in Channel migrant crossings as over 400 migrants are expected to make the illegal crossing simply by the end of today.
Wow, OK. And up in smoke, disposable vapes will be banned from June next year. Is this a necessary move? Is this the nanny state? Or will this push more people back into smoking even? Well, we put the question of slavery reparations to Nigel Farage a little bit earlier on. And what did he say? No, 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 no. I think he said no 4 times.
I think he said no, 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 never. Which is obviously a refrain on Margaret Thatcher's famous speech from 1990, no, 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 but he added a never, so perhaps he one-upped her. But this is, it's a fascinating issue. The government has been saying for weeks and weeks and weeks, this is not going to be on the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting agenda. And then suddenly Keir Starmer arrives there and he's sort of... I don't know. It's a broadside against the UK with these demands for reparations and discussions on reparations that are on the draft communiqué, despite the Prime Minister's protestations. It does seem that perhaps the United Kingdom is seeming weaker on the international stage than at many points in our history. And I wonder how much of this is a direct consequence of giving away the Chagos Islands. Do we now suddenly look like a soft touch on the world stage, as if we'll give away anything?
Well, I think it's that, and I also think they know they have allies within the Labour Party. I mean, you've got backbench MPs talking about this. Belle Ribeiro Addy, she's warning the Commonwealth will crumble if the government doesn't reopen talks on reparations. You've got David Lammy in the past talking very passionately about the need for reparations for Caribbean nations. I mean, if I was a Caribbean nation leader, I'd be thinking, maybe I'm in with a chance. They say no, but do they mean no?
Yeah, and we've seen the Foreign Minister of the Bahamas just this morning pointing to what David Lammy has said in the past, pointing to what Keir Starmer has said in the past and his past as an international human rights lawyer, saying that, well, they think they've got a good chance with this government. But what do you think? gbnews.com/your say is the way to get involved. Would you like to stump up more money to pay reparations to countries that used to be part of the British Empire? All that to come after your headlines with Sam Francis. Very good afternoon to you. It is 3 minutes past 1. The top story this lunchtime. The government has confirmed a ban on disposable vapes from June of next year. Figures suggest nearly 5 million single-use devices are thrown away each week. And there's also concern over the impact on children's health. But critics claim the ban will only drive illegal sales, with the Vaping Industry Association warning that people will still continue to use disposable vapes from the black market. Devolved governments are expected to introduce similar bans around the same time next year. Sir Keir Starmer has been told by Commonwealth leaders he must come to the table at their summit in Samoa to discuss reparations for what they've described as the ill effects of slavery. Caribbean countries have been pressing for reparations, with a report last year estimating the UK owes over £18 trillion. The Bahamas Foreign Minister says justice is about more than money. It's about, they say, addressing the lasting impact of slavery. However, Downing Street says the issue isn't on the agenda. Meanwhile, King Charles is also attending that summit, which begins on Friday. GB News can officially reveal the imminent rise in Channel migrant crossings today, with numbers expected to exceed last year's total within just 48 hours. 5 boats arrived this morning, carrying more than 250 migrants transferred to the Border Force Processing Centre in Dover. And a further 3 small boats were seen heading towards UK waters this lunchtime, expected to take the total number of arrivals so far this year to more than 29,000. The total figure for small boat migrants over the whole of 2023 was 29,437. And a breaking line into us this lunchtime. Child serial killer Lucy Letby has lost her High Court bid to challenge her conviction for the attempted murder of a baby girl. The 34-year-old was found guilty of attempting to kill a newborn known as Child K and was seeking permission to appeal against that conviction, claiming that media coverage had led to overwhelming prejudice. However, today, 3 senior judges in London rejected her application. The nurse is already serving 14 whole-life orders for the murders of 7 babies and the attempted murders of 6 others. Today's ruling marks her second unsuccessful appeal attempt following her similar dismissal in May regarding her earlier convictions. We'll have much more on that latest breaking news with our reporter Sophie Reaper later this hour. In other news, a 60-year-old woman is being questioned on suspicion of manslaughter after 3 people died at a care home in Dorset. Police are now investigating carbon monoxide poisoning as a possible cause after Gainsborough care home residents were evacuated. 7 people were taken to hospital and 40 others moved to safety during the emergency early yesterday morning. Health and safety officials have now arrived at the scene and a police cordon is still in place. Shoplifting offences in England and in Wales have hit a 20-year high, with nearly 470,000 incidents recorded by police in the year to June 2024. That's a 29% jump from 2023, according to the Office for National Statistics. The rise follows major retailers warning of the growing cost of theft and violence towards shopkeepers. In response, the government plans to make assaulting a shop worker a specific criminal offence. Retailers say they are hopeful the new measures announced in the King's speech will help prosecutors to prosecute offences more effectively. Bereaved families of those who died in the infected blood scandal are now eligible for compensation after decades of waiting. The government made the announcement to offer an interim payment of £100,000, but critics say the system is fiendishly complicated and legal assistance may be needed. More than 30,000 people were infected with hepatitis C, HIV and other viruses during the NHS blood transfusions between the 1970s and early 1990s, with 3,000 losing their lives. Campaigners have welcomed the announcement over payments, but are demanding more clarity on the full compensation scheme. In Scotland, the National Rape Crisis charity is facing turmoil after one of its biggest support centres has cut ties over a row about gender and women's-only spaces. Glasgow and Clyde Rape Crisis says it is splitting from Rape Crisis Scotland because their priorities clash, they say, over single-sex services, which Glasgow insists are crucial for survivors of sexual trauma. It follows an independent review that found Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre had failed to provide women-only spaces for 16 months, leading to the resignation of its chief executive. And 16 people, including children, have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school in Gaza, according to local officials there. The school in the Nusrat refugee camp was being used as a shelter for displaced families when the strike hit. The hospital there says 32 others were injured. Israel, though, hasn't yet commented, but the military has previously said it is targeting Hamas militants hiding among civilians. It comes after months of strikes on schools turned shelters in the region. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Plenty more coming up in the next half hour.
OK, good afternoon, Britain. It's 8 minutes past 1. Now, UK authorities are preparing for a fresh surge in Channel migrant crossings today, with the numbers arriving expected to surpass the figure for the whole of last year within 48 hours.
Yes, at least 400 migrants are expected to have crossed the English Channel by the end of today, taking us dangerously close to that whole year figure. GB News Home and Security editor Mark White joins us now. Mark, a stunning number.
Yeah, this is a grim milestone that will make very uncomfortable reading for the new Labour government. Of course, when Sir Keir Starmer came into office, the first thing he did was to scrap the Rwanda deterrent scheme that the previous government was in the process of enacting, and instead said that he would smash the gangs and end the small boat crossings. Well, far from ending the small boat crossings, far from even slowing it down, they have accelerated on where we were at this point last year. So for the whole of last year, we had 29,437 people that crossed the English Channel. Well, we are now at the point where it's 28,645 who've crossed, but that doesn't include around 400 who've crossed today. And we're expecting in the next 2 to 3 days, with not too bad, passable weather conditions in the Channel, for more small boats to come out. And so that figure of 29,437 will be passed within the next 48 hours. So passed in 48 hours, and that is still giving us 2 and a bit months to go into the end of the year. So you know where the trajectory is heading. OK, we go into the winter months, there will be fewer days where it's passable in the Channel, but there will still be a good number of days where several hundred at a time, even more, could be coming across the Channel. We could be looking at 35,000 at least by the end of the year.
So I guess if the government wants to solve this problem, they need to work out why the numbers are already so close to exceeding last year's numbers, and what can be done about it. Could this have something to do with the chaos when it comes to policy over this area being changed so much with the new government? And, you know, we've heard from migrants in Calais and here who've crossed saying, you know, we've got less chance of being deported now there's a Labour government.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, you know, little chance of being deported even under the Conservatives, if we're honest. But that's not changed under Labour. In fact, they're expediting the process to ensure that they can try to get those who are applying for asylum dealt with as quickly as possible. Well, what does that mean? It means that if you are qualifying for asylum, yes, your asylum is granted. If you don't qualify for asylum, but you come from a country it's not safe to send you back, you get leave to remain anyway. So the vast majority of people that are coming across at the moment are from countries that we either don't have a treaty with or they're deemed not to be safe enough to send them back to. So that means the vast majority of people, even if you process them more quickly, are still getting to stay here. And that message filters all the way back down the pipeline to those who are planning to make the journey in the first place, coming to the northern shores of France, trying to get to the UK, knowing that in a vast majority of cases they'll be allowed to stay here.
So as you say, Mark, we're pretty much at the entire number of crossings for last year, and it's only, well, it's still October.
Yeah.
I mean, there's still more than 2 months of this year to go. You mentioned a number, 35,000, where you think this year could land.
At least.
That's 20% higher than last year. That's not stopping the gangs, that's not smashing the gangs, that's turbocharging the gangs.
Yeah, and the difficulty for Sir Keir Starmer and the Labour government in terms of the policy of smashing the gangs is that these things are never a quick fix. They've set up the new Border Security Command. They are going to be working ever closer with the likes of the intelligence agencies, more money for the National Crime Agency and police forces involved in what is a pan-national an international endeavour that you have to work closely with countries right around the world to get on top of. But investigations take time. And there's every likelihood that even in the fullness of time, you won't really make that many inroads into smashing the gangs in the same way that we don't really have huge success in dealing with the international drug problem. Yes, there are instances when we have huge drugs busts, but the vast majority of drugs still get through. We've still got an international drugs problem. Well, the people smuggling business is a multi-billion-pound business right around the globe, and for every gang they take out, there are plenty more willing to take their place because it's just so lucrative.
Yeah, and in the meantime, it's costing the British taxpayer millions of pounds a day. The government are reportedly buying up more hotels, not fewer hotels, as we were promised by this new government. It's clear there needs to be some kind of deterrent, because clearly people are willing to risk their lives every single day to cross over. Thank you very much indeed, Mark White, our Home and Security Editor, for bringing us that update.
Well, we're going to cross back to Westminster now because the Commonwealth heads of government are set to defy the UK, demanding slavery reparations at this Leaders' Summit today.
Yes, the Prime Minister has insisted calls for reparations are not on the meeting's agenda, saying he'd rather focus on current challenges like climate change.
But reports are that reparations are on this draft communiqué, and the Bahamian Foreign Affairs Minister, Frederick Mitchell, said earlier today it's only a matter of time before Sir Keir changes his position.
It seems unusual to us because you've got the Labour Party in power, and this, we thought, was something that the Conservative Party in the UK would be the progenitor of, and that Labour would certainly change its position on this. And particularly since you have an Afro-British man as the Foreign Secretary, to put him in a position where he's advancing a position that no reparations, no discussion on reparations. So I think a very frank conversation has to be had on this. Given Sir Keir's work before he became Prime Minister, given Mr. Lamy's position before he got this job that he has now, they bring their individual consciences to this job, and I think eventually they'll come around to the position.
Interesting, the Bahamian Foreign Minister there thinking, really, that Keir Starmer and David Lammy are instinctively on his side. Earlier on in the show, Reform UK leader Nigel Farage told us that the UK should never say yes to reparations.
What does Sir Keir Starmer say to Commonwealth countries wanting reparations for our slavery past?
No, no, never. Now, there is an argument for reparations, obviously. I think the French, during the 100 Years' War, I think the raids into Kent and Sussex, the loss of so much. I mean, where do you stop with this?
Well, could reparations now be on the cards? GBNews political editor Christopher Hope joins us live from Westminster. And Christopher, I want to start with a new piece of news being reported by Jason Groves, the political editor of the Daily Mail. He's said in the last few minutes that a Whitehall source has suggested to him that Keir Starmer could sign up to a Commonwealth Summit communiqué that references slavery reparations. A stunning U-turn from the government if this is true.
If true, that's right. Jason Groves says that signing up to this agreed text at the end of the heads of government meeting on Saturday wouldn't necessarily mean there's a change of policy. And it's worth explaining to viewers what a communiqué is. It's a diplomatic speak for an agreed way forward, an agreed statement that all parties sign up for. What may have been leaked already to the BBC out in Samoa is a text which maybe the countries in the West Indies want and other African countries want, but it's not one which may not have been signed up to by white Commonwealth countries. And that's why there's going to be a debate right now between today and Saturday when it's unveiled. It's worth looking at the wording on the text so far, which looks like it hasn't yet had any UK input. It says there they want to look at reparative justice with regard to transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans, and they agree that the time has come for a meaningful, truthful and respectful conversation towards forging a common future based on equity. Well, you can imagine that will be agreed to by the Labour government. And also crucially agreed to prioritise and facilitate a forum for additional research on transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans and chattel slavery that encourages a conversation and informs the future. So if you look at the wording on that, it's not saying we're paying out billions from our country to countries that their forebears are victims of slavery, merely to look further into the issue, which may be something which the Labour government may think could be worthwhile, because as you were saying, Tom, if the cost is anything from 200 billion to 17 trillion, it's clearly a ridiculous conversation. Those figures are far bigger than many times bigger than the amount of money in our UK economy. But if they do look into it further and find a number they can all agree on, that may be a way forward. But of course, as you heard from Nigel Farage, many would say, no, no, no. Where does it stop? Do you think about the Catholics in the past when they had lands seized from them by the King of England, Henry VIII? Where do you go back to? And the problem is when you're unpicking bits of history in one part of our history, others may come and complicate it. And that's why I think Keir Starmer is saying on the way to Samoa, he wants to move on, look forward, think more about climate change, maybe our aid budget, how to help countries which were affected by slavery in the past. Maybe that's the way forward. But going back over history can create more problems for the future.
I mean, there's a lot, though, that Caribbean nations, Caribbean leaders can point to. You know, we've ceded sovereignty of the Chagos Islands. We've heard David Lammy passionately speaking in the past about the need for reparations for Caribbean nations. A lot of backbenchers within the Labour Party are very sympathetic to this idea. I mean, it's not that much of a stretch, is it, for these Caribbean nation leaders to think, well, actually, if we knock on the door hard enough and for a prolonged enough time, we might actually get our way, even if it's not $18 trillion.
Emily, you're totally right. And that's exactly what Frederick Mitchell, who's the Bahamian foreign minister, was saying today on the BBC. He was making very clearly, look at Keir Starmer's history as a human rights lawyer. Look what David Lammy said after the Black Lives Matter protest started. He said, apologies aren't enough, we want reparations. And that's a black foreign secretary for the UK saying that. They're looking at that and saying, well, if they're saying that, let's test it. Let's see how far they'll go down that route. And that's why I think, you know, what politicians say in the past will have a bearing on our national future. But Labour won their majority. They are the government this country elected. Now they've got to understand and try and chart a way through a very difficult waters.
Well, Christopher Hope, thank you so much for joining us live from Westminster here. It seems this is a fast developing story. We'll continue to watch with close eyes as to how the government and whether the government signs up to this communique.
I mean, a row over slavery reparations is the last thing Keir Starmer needs, isn't it?
The thing that I find that most egregious about this conversation is if this genuinely ends up being that we raid the foreign aid budget and take this money that was going to the poorest countries in the world instead goes to former British colonies. Let's just look at what that means in practice. Ethiopia, famously, was never colonised by Western nations. So it never had sort of Western slavery imposed on it. Average salary in Ethiopia today, between $1,000 and $2,000 per year. The Bahamas, of course, which had a lot of slavery, which were a British colony, part of the British Empire, average salary between $30,000 and $35,000 a year. Are we really going to be taking from Ethiopia to give to the Bahamas? I mean, it's a stunning sort of injustice if that really happens. If we take money that was going to go to some of the poorest places in the world and give it instead to middle-income countries, because that's what these countries are. If you're a country that was in the British Empire, it's likely you are richer than countries that weren't.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, a lot of our foreign aid budget is now going on migrant hotels, isn't it? So there's that as well. Anyway, get involved in the conversation. gbnews.com/your say is the way to get in touch. Now, we've got lots more coming up on today's show. Lucy Letby, the killer nurse, has lost a Court of Appeal bid to challenge her conviction for the attempted murder of a baby girl. We'll have more detail on that next.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Well, drinkers have been warned about a drop in the quality of French wines after poor weather conditions hit this year's grape harvest. Winemakers across France will make 240 million fewer bottles of wine this year, the country's farming ministry said on Tuesday. So should we think of switching from French to English? I'm joined now by sommelier and founder of Inflorescence Wines, Jacinta Madison Williams. Hello, Jacinta.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. First of all, let's just think about the poor French.
We should.
Has this been a fairly universal weather catastrophe for France?
It has. A kind of across the board, we're about 22% down on last year's crops, which is quite significant. I think it's like one of the 4 years over the last century that have been this low. So,
and it's affected both quality and quantity?
I would say more so quantity. There's always ways of counteracting quality. It depends if people are desperate to make wine. They can obviously push out more watered down grapes. There's been a lot of rain, if you hadn't noticed. Not only in France, we felt it here too. But lots of frost, supercell hailstorms have completely wiped out some crops. So in some cases, there's nothing to make. In other cases, it's just really watered down grapes and you want to pick earlier to make sure you're avoiding all those rains. But I would say more so it's quantity. But saying that, France is still the biggest producer of wine in the world. It might be taken over by Spain this year, but as a consumer, don't panic. We're not going to run out of wine. And we obviously have lots of lovely wine growing here now in England. So whether we do make a little jump for a bit to English wine, but there's definitely still lots out there.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking,
this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get the book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 26 minutes past midday. Now, Lucy Letby has lost a Court of Appeal bid to challenge her conviction for the attempted murder of a baby girl.
Right, let's cross over to Sophie Reaper, who is outside the Royal Courts of Justice for the very latest. Sophie.
Well, we were only in court for a relatively short amount of time today, around 2.5 hours between the start and when that panel of 3 judges returned with the refusal of Lucy Letby's application to appeal. Now, it started today with Letby's defence barrister Benjamin Myers-Casey taking to the stand to set out exactly what their application was about, and it really seemed to centre around the question of fairness. He said that Justice Goss, the judge who'd presided over the retrial earlier this year, should not have let it go ahead because of what he described as overwhelming and irremediable prejudice. He gave examples from reports in the media to comments from significant public figures like the Prime Minister, which he, quote, said was saturated with unadulterated vitriol towards Lucy Letby. Now, then Nick Johnson, KC of the prosecution, stood up and he went through all 62 of the examples that the defence gave, one by one, pointing out flaws with each of them. He said that the retrial was 9 months prior to those publications, and in fact, because of the fade factor, it shouldn't have an impact. He even quipped that today's front pages are tomorrow's fish and chip wrappers. Now, once all submissions had been made, that panel of 3 judges retired, returning only around 20 minutes later, simply stating right off the bat that they were refusing Lucy Letby's application to appeal. They said they felt the judge was right to find that Letby could have a fair trial.
This is, of course, a hugely contentious issue. You've seen members of Parliament like David Davis take up the cause of Lucy Letby. There are some people online who are very adamant that this woman is innocent. But from your experience, Sophie, following this trial over the many, many months that it has gone on, what do you make of the sort of movement from some statisticians and politicians to reassess this?
I think it's a very difficult one, Tom, of course, that as the media, we kind of have to be objective. But I would say that one thing that we've taken away from this is the families. We are told time and time again by CPS, Crime Prosecution Service, and by Cheshire Constabulary that we need to keep the families in our minds whenever we're making reports, whenever anyone is speaking about these trials. Of course, we've had trials, we've had retrials. There's the inquiry going on at the minute over in Liverpool. But what we need to do is remember that at the heart of all of this, there are families who have either lost a child or had a child seriously injured by the actions that Lucy Letby has been convicted of. And those are the people that we need to keep in mind as we discuss this trial.
Absolutely, we do. Sophie Reaper, thank you very much indeed for being outside the Royal Court of Justice for us. Yes, as you say, politicians saying quite a lot about this. Nadine Dorries has already tweeted about this. She's saying, behind every miscarriage of justice, there is a jury. She's been sentenced to spend her entire life in prison on the back of circumstantial evidence. They're not dropping this. Her and David Davis seem to be the loudest political voices on this.
But there were millions of words spoken over the course of the months of this trial. Neither of those politicians, or in Nadine Dorries' case, former politician, have seen every single word of that transcript. They didn't sit through all of that evidence. I do find it quite difficult when there has been such a unanimous verdict. It's not like the jury were torn on this one.
Yeah. I'm just not sure why you'd come up with such a strong position. If I were Nadine Dorries, I mean, what does she know that, you know, everyone else didn't know during this trial? Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Kamala Harris has been making some quite unhinged, I would say, comments about Donald Trump in the latest in this election campaign. We'll dive into those next.
Very good afternoon to you. It is exactly 1:30, and the top story this lunchtime. The government has confirmed a ban on disposable vapes starting from June 2025 amid concerns about their impact on children's health. The announcement comes as 5 million single-use vapes are discarded each week, with their use growing over 400% in the last 10 years. However, critics claim the move will drive illegal sales, with the Vaping Industry Association warning there'll be a black market surge. The government is being pushed to confirm its position on reparations for the UK's role in the slave trade. That's as Sir Keir Starmer is facing mounting pressure from Caribbean nations at a summit he's attending in Samoa. Shadow Commons leader Chris Philps says, though, it's wrong to ask for money for what he says are very serious sins committed hundreds of years ago. However, the Bahamas Foreign Minister says justice is about more than money. They say it's about addressing the lasting impact of slavery. As we were just hearing from our reporter Sophie Reaper, the child serial killer Lucy Letby has lost today her High Court bid to challenge her conviction for the attempted murder of a baby girl. The 34-year-old was found guilty of attempting to kill a newborn child known as Child K and was seeking permission to appeal against that conviction. claiming media coverage had led to overwhelming prejudice. However, 3 senior judges in London have rejected her application. The nurse is already serving 14 whole-life orders for the murders of 7 babies and the attempted murders of 6 others. Today's ruling marks her second unsuccessful appeal attempt following a similar dismissal in May regarding her earlier convictions. The latest breaking development on the situation in Dorset, where a 60-year-old woman has now been released under investigation after her arrest over the deaths of 3 residents at Gainsborough Care Home in Swanage. She was detained last night in Dorset on suspicion of manslaughter, with police exploring carbon monoxide poisoning as a key line of inquiry. The victims, now known to be 2 men aged 74 and 91 and a woman 86 years old, were found dead on Wednesday, and their deaths are currently being treated as unexplained as part of a complex investigation. And GB News can reveal an imminent rise in Channel migrant crossings, with numbers expected to exceed last year's total within just the next 48 hours. At least 400 migrants are anticipated to have made the journey by the end of today, following 5 boat arrivals this morning, carrying over 250 people into Dover. A further 3 small boats were seen heading towards the UK earlier, taking the number of migrant arrivals so far this year to more than 29,000. The total figure for small boat migrants over the whole of last year was 29,437. It comes as reckless people smuggling operations have already resulted in nearly 50 deaths this year. Those are the latest headlines for now. A full roundup at 2 o'clock.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
And let's take a look at the markets for you as they stand this lunchtime. The pound will buy you $1.2980 and €1.2017. The price of gold, £2,108.50 per ounce, and the FTSE 100 is at 8,294 points.
Cheers Britannia Wine Club proudly sponsors the GB News Financial Report.
Hi there, welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Dry for most of us today, but increasingly cloudy in the west, with some rain turning up later. There's a slow-moving weather front out to the west. Ahead of it, a mild southerly airflow and increasingly cloudy as that weather front approaches, but it takes most of the day to bring its rain in. Having said that, the Outer Hebrides seeing some outbreaks of rain during the afternoon, and the cloud thick enough to give a few spots elsewhere in the west. But the best of the sunshine will be through the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. Just some patchy cloud here and feeling very mild, 16 to 18 Celsius, 14 to 15 further north. But it's towards the northwest where we see the wind strengthen at times, especially western Scotland. It will be blustery through the afternoon, and we've got that rain persisting through Lewis and Harris and heading into the west of Scotland, or the rest of western Scotland, I should say, into the evening. Northern Ireland just seeing that rain fringe upon western parts as we go through the evening, but parts of North Wales, Northern England, the North Midlands, still enjoying some clear spells before the cloud does thicken overnight. The cloud will lower overnight across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast to give some fog in places by dawn. But in the west, well, that's when the rain finally moves in. It's going to be heavy and at times persistent across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest during the early hours. Could cause some issues by dawn in 1 or 2 spots, but it's drier towards the east, albeit fairly gloomy as we start off Friday. It is a mild start, but with extensive cloud cover, it's not going to be very pleasant first thing. And we've got the rain moving through Wales into the Midlands during the early afternoon, albeit petering out and turning more showery as the day progresses. Blustery in the southwest and less mild, staying mild and mostly dry in the north and east.
The latest GB News travel.
I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M62 in West Yorkshire. Firstly, westbound, the exit slip road is partially blocked for an obstruction in the road at junction 26 Chain Bar. And on the eastbound stretch, there's a lane closed for emergency repairs at junction 25 Brighouse. Delays on the M50 in Gloucestershire. The eastbound stretch has been affected by an accident between junction 2 Ledbury and 1 for Tewkesbury. It's also causing slow traffic on the opposite carriageway. In Northamptonshire, the M1 southbound queues there. There's a lane closed for a broken down vehicle between junction 17 for the M45 and 16 for Daventry. And we're seeing queuing traffic on the M25 anti-clockwise in Essex in the roadworks area between junction 26 Waltham Abbey and 25 Enfield. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 37 minutes past 1. Now, Kamala Harris yesterday was scathing towards Donald Trump on alleged comments he made when he was president. Well, the claims are he wished to have a general like Hitler did. Let's take a listen.
So yesterday we learned that Donald Trump's former chief of staff, John Kelly, a retired four-star general, confirmed that while Donald Trump was president, he said he wanted generals like Adolf Hitler had. Donald Trump said that because he does not want a military that is loyal to the United States Constitution. He wants a military that is loyal to him. It is deeply troubling and incredibly dangerous that Donald Trump would invoke Adolf Hitler, the man who is responsible for the deaths of 6 million Jews and hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Right, OK, that's what Kamala Harris had to say. Now, this comes as recent polling suggests Donald Trump is now pulling ahead in the race for the White House, leading in several crucial swing states. But I guess the question is, will the resurfacing of these alleged comments damage his campaign?
Well, for more on this, we're joined by the political commentator and strategist, Scotty Nell Hughes. Scotty, these are, whichever way you try and cut them, deeply, deeply strange comments.
They're deeply strange comments, but realize that there is no actual facts or video footage or anyone else that is backing General Kelly up about these comments. Let me point out again, Kelly was not a very popular man in Trump's administration, and he let him go. And from the moment that Kelly left the White House, he has been extremely bitter, like most former Trump employees. And so once again, we're finding at the end the Democrats are pulling a tool out of their old playbook to try to align Donald Trump with Hitler. When we're seeing that the polls are once again changing to go to Donald Trump's favor. So they go back to this kind of deja vu of an old tactic they've used for over the years. And in this case, there's no actual fact to back it up except for one bitter former employee that was let go by President Trump because of the way he failed to serve him in his administration.
Are Americans listening to this type of thing? I mean, for years, people have been saying Donald Trump is like Hitler, Donald Trump is a fascist, Donald Trump wants complete control, and things like this. Are the Americans listening to that?
Absolutely not, especially at this point. There's not a single American that does not have their mind made up as to who they're going to vote for. What you're seeing in these last 2 weeks, and this is why early voting has been so overwhelming in some of the key red states, is you're seeing the Democrats trying to keep Republicans from going to vote, from keeping them engaged, from telling them it's not worth them voting, that they don't want to put their support behind this man. And it's obvious the Democrats don't understand what history is, because just even comparing right now is absolutely hypocritical, the Democrats, to compare Donald Trump or any Republican to what we saw from Hitler and his regime. In the fact that you've got the Democrats are the ones that are using the government to impose their type of will on businesses, on the people. That's exactly what fascism is. That's what Hitler did. And we just saw a few weeks ago, they put through the DOD, they gave them the power. It's called DOD Directive 205. For the first time in history, you have they've been authorized to use lethal force to kill Americans who protest the government on U.S. soil. So if you want to talk about fascism, if you want to talk about a Hitler-esque government, it's what exactly Americans are living in right now. And I think a lot of us are holding our breath praying that we can make it the next 2 weeks or till January 20th when they inaugurate Donald Trump because of the type of dangerous rhetoric that is coming out of this campaign and the current administration.
But Scotty, we knew that from around 2020 there was lots of reporting from multiple sources that Trump was increasingly frustrated with the lack of direct control over generals. The fact that the United States Constitution sets up this sort of distinction that you don't have direct democratic control. Politicians can't tell generals directly what to do. It's clear that he was frustrated over that instance, and he was frustrated with General Mattis, with General Kelly. I mean, very, very senior people. It doesn't seem... Do you really think that they're all making this comment up?
Well, make no mistake. He is still the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military forces. And so there is still a lot of power that exists within the executive branch when it comes to our Department of Defense. At that point, though, I think that's where the frustration came. Because if you've looked at the last 4 years of this administration, you've seen a very pro-war, pro-interference into foreign affairs that have nothing to do with U.S. American security. And Donald Trump was against that in 2016. He's against it now. He is definitely against the neocon establishment within the Republican Party. He does not believe that our foreign policy currently under this administration, underneath this Department of Defense, is in the best interest of Americans, hence why he is so popular right now, because I think Americans agree with him. And so you can see why there'd be that disagreement with his military. On the opposite side, you do have those who do agree. You have a long list of American soldiers and generals who do support. And I think this is why you're seeing overwhelming. The American military still supports Donald Trump over Kamala Harris any day. Maybe not the brass, but the guys who are actually on the ground that their lives would have to be sacrificed. They overwhelmingly support Donald Trump and the Republican Party because of their anti-war, anti-foreign interference that we continue to see underneath this administration.
And Scotty, just lastly, I'm interested to know what you make of Trump's team's claims that the Labour Party over here, who are the governing party, have been interfering in the US election. We've seen a number of Labour Party activists heading over to the States to try and campaign for Kamala Harris. What do you make of this? Is this a proper diplomatic row from your perspective?
Well, it is a small world, but, this comes on the heels of them claiming that every other foreign government has come in and interfered in American elections in the past. At this point, is it going to make much of a difference at the Labour Party? I actually think it hurts because I think Americans want to be able to make their own decision, don't like any foreign interference from any country, regardless of what it is. So if this turns out to be true, I think it's something to be investigated about. Is it going to change a single vote? Absolutely not. Seems more like a vacation or a holiday for these Labour Party members that want to come over here. They just want a free trip.
Quite possibly.
Your dollar.
Quite possibly. Thank you very much indeed. Scotty Hughes, great to speak to you, political commentator and strategist.
Well, I think this press conference from Kamala Harris does really show how close this race now is. These swing states really in contention. Less than 2 weeks to go until voting closes, until that election night. And I sort of, whether or not these comments were made, I think it's probably more likely that they were made than they were not. We know how loose-lipped Donald Trump can be. The fact that Kamala Harris saw it fit to call a press conference in a sort of quasi-official capacity over these comments, is it a bit of a desperate measure?
Yeah, I mean, we should know if Donald Trump was sat there praising Adolf Hitler non-stop. Of course, we should know that. But it is interesting that so close to the election, Kamala Harris feels the need to come up and evoke Hitler as well and try to say that Donald Trump is this massive fascist who's going to want to control every aspect of your life.
I just wish that people would understand a bit more of history. Why are people praising Donald Trump? Why are people praising Adolf Hitler's generals or his relationship with his generals? Do we need to remember that he lost the war? Do we need to remind ourselves that his generals wanted strategic retreats as Hitler kept pushing armies east into Russia, and Hitler said, no, you cannot even do a strategic retreat, and that condemned many hundreds of thousands of German troops to their deaths. Do we need to remember that generals told Hitler, no, this Battle of the Bulge idea was a terrible strategy, and he went and did it anyway? Hitler did not have this complete sort of obsequious general class that I think Donald Trump is trying to suggest he did.
Well, what we do know is this election campaign is going to get more and more vicious as we get closer to that date. This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up indeed. You're shaking your head. Furious, furious. Anyway, we're going to be talking about something else that will make Tom furious, which is the apparent death of the nightclub. I mean, I don't frequent such places anymore, but perhaps my co-host does.
I am irate at this news. This coming up next.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now, our next guests have been working closely with celebrities and MPs to help clean up our planet.
Very important. Think Ocean was founded in 2021 with two main goals. One, educating the next generation to make sure that they know when they're growing up that naturally we have to take care of the planet, and cleaning pollution that's already in the environment.
Well, joining us now to tell us more is Think Ocean's founder, Hugo Valdez-Vera, and the co-founder, Nolene Mariappan. Really good
morning,
to see you both this morning. So, Nolene, let's start with you. What is Think Ocean, and why did you want to start this back in 2021?
Yes, so Hugo had actually been working on the environment and climate action for quite a long time. When he moved to the UK, he realised that there was a growing problem with plastic pollution and that more needed to be done because people weren't actually seeing the link between plastic, the impact on the environment and climate change. So he founded the organisation and I joined him with three goals, really. Education, looking at technology to scale solutions, and looking at how we develop more circular economy programmes. So actually looking at reusing, recycling, actually creating local economies from what people would consider waste.
Hugo, just how bad is plastic pollution around the world, and especially here in the UK?
Well, it is bad, but we don't know the extent of how bad it is. You know, this is not much interest from the bigger players or, some government for us to know every detail of the pollution. So if we know that is from 1 to 10 is 2, probably it's about 6.
Oh.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is now 10 to 2, and the Nighttime Industries Association has issued a warning that the country's nightclub scene is on the brink of extinction.
Will you miss it? This comes as 37% of clubs have gone out of business since March 2020 at a rate of 3 per week. I wonder what sparked that, eh?
Well, the Last Night Out campaign has been created to highlight the downturn of the nighttime economy. It's calling on the government to launch a scheme that would grant nightclubs with targeted financial support.
Well, joining us now to discuss this is GB News reporter Adam Cherry, who had his own night out, I believe, for us. Adam, I understand Tiger has closed its doors.
Unfortunately so, guys. Yeah, I'm standing outside Tiger on Haymarket. It's closed its doors permanently after 26 years in operation. It's really a story of the entire country's nighttime economy, which is in almost terminal decline. I did have a night out last night. I did bring my camera operator with me. This is what a few punters and some nightclub operators, which is really interesting, this is what they had to say yesterday.
Well, plenty. Licensing, culture change, business rates, duty on VAT. I mean, there are many problems that we're facing.
I'm surprised tonight is quite quiet. Catcalling is terrible, just feels unsafe. I wouldn't walk on my own in Camden.
I've been clubbing since I was 13 and I love Soho. I used to live on this street, Charing Cross Road, and since the Elizabethan line was put in, Elizabeth line, yeah, they've uprooted all the roads, they've changed how it was when I was a young pup, but Soho still rocks, baby.
So at least one person keeping the flame alive there. But it tells a general story, doesn't it? And in London specifically, Soho has a real problem. It's very difficult in central London, as I'm sure some viewers will know, to find a drink to get after about 9 or 10 o'clock. Last orders hit very early. Part of the reason for that is noise complaints, licensing issues, wars with the local council, safety is another issue, so particularly for women and girls, the night tube, the infrastructure just isn't there, and Uber is very expensive. So there are a lot of problems, and as the Nighttime Industries Association's figures show, by 2030, trends, the last nightclub will close its doors, and we'll see a lot more like Tiger Tiger behind me.
Shame, Tiger Tiger. I've had a couple of nights out there back in the day when I was a teenager.
I've been there before. I think I've been there once. But I have to say, Adam, you talk about these sort of licensing restrictions, people that live nearby. I mean, frankly, if you choose to live in the centre of a megacity, should you really expect it to be all quiet enough for you to go to sleep with no double glazing by 10 o'clock at night? I mean, do people have unrealistic expectations of just how serene the centre of our busiest cities should be?
Maybe, yeah. I mean, there are a lot of stories of pubs having to battle with the council over those sorts of issues. Noise complaints being a massive one. Doesn't really make sense, does it? As you say, if you live in central London, you might expect a bit of noise. But Soho specifically is now writing to the Mayor of London and to City Hall to say that they want to be included in the Mayoral Development Corporation, which is that plan to regenerate Oxford Street. So they want to be a part of it as well and try and improve things in the next couple of years and maybe save the nightlife.
To take control of those streets out of Westminster Council, which, whether it's Labour or Tory, has always prevented longer opening hours and all the rest of it. Adam Cherry, thank you so much for joining us, and RIP to Tiger Tiger.
Very sad, very sad. Just tax them less and get rid of some of those regulations. Anyway, lots more coming up on today's show. We are, of course, going to be finding out exactly where we are with these slavery reparations. Has something changed?
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Dry for most of us today, but increasingly cloudy in the west, with some rain turning up later. There's a slow-moving weather front out to the west. Ahead of it, a mild southerly airflow and increasingly cloudy as that weather front approaches. But it takes most of the day to bring its rain in. Having said that, the Outer Hebrides seeing some outbreaks of rain during the afternoon, and the cloud thick enough to give a few spots elsewhere in the west. But the best of the sunshine will be through the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. Just some patchy cloud here, and feeling very mild, 16 to 18 Celsius, 14 to 15 further north. But it's towards the northwest where we see the wind strengthen at times, especially western Scotland. It will be blustery through the afternoon, and we've got that rain persisting through Lewis and Harris and heading into the west of Scotland, or the rest of western Scotland, I should say, into the evening. Northern Ireland just seeing that rain fringe upon western parts as we go through the evening, but parts of North Wales, northern England, the North Midlands, still enjoying some clear spells before the cloud does thicken overnight. The cloud will lower overnight across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast to give some fog in places by dawn. But in the west, well, that's when the rain finally moves in. It's going to be heavy and at times persistent across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest during the early hours. Could cause some issues by dawn in 1 or 2 spots. But it's drier towards the east, albeit fairly gloomy as we start off Friday. It is a mild start, but with extensive cloud cover. It's not going to be very pleasant first thing. And we've got the rain moving through Wales into the Midlands during the early afternoon, albeit petering out and turning more showery as the day progresses. Blustery in the southwest and less mild, staying mild and mostly dry in the north and east.
We can expect clear skies, leading to a light and warm day ahead. Lovely. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win a whopping £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having £3,000 each month for an entire year. Extra cash in your bank account that you can do whatever you like with. Make sure you don't miss out. Get your entry in now. Just one entry could make you the winner. For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close 5 p.m. this Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Why go out on a Friday night when Friday night comes straight to your home?
Talking about?
Join me and my A-team of top pundits. Chemistry tonight is electric. As we tackle the big stories of the day with wit, insight and fearless energy.
Man of the people.
It's all vibe.
Just a filing cabinet on wheels with a tie on.
So, order in Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, every Friday at 8, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It's 2 o'clock on Thursday, the 24th of October. I'm Tom Harwood.
And I'm Emily Carver.
Reparation demands. Rebellious Caribbean leaders are set to force slavery reparations on the Commonwealth Summit agenda. The Bahamas Foreign Minister expects Keir Starmer and David Lammy to U-turn, thanks to what they've said in the past.
And a crisis in the Channel. UK authorities are preparing for a fresh surge in Channel migrant crossings. The numbers arriving are expected to surpass the figure for the whole of last year within the next 48 hours.
Plus, should we have a fact tax? A new Lords report says the government should consider taxing unhealthy food rather than relying on weight loss drugs. But should it be the rest of us who pay the costs of obesity?
last report with our reporter Adam Cherry got us thinking about nightlife in London and across the country. You were in Durham for university. I was down in Bristol. Certainly, you know, partook in a lot of clubbing back then.
We had a stunning nightclub in Durham. It's called Clute nightclub.
Still there?
Sadly, I've learned this because I'm going up to Durham to speak in a debate this Friday, and I was looking forward to going back to Clute with its very sticky floors. It was voted the second worst nightclub in Europe a few years ago, and then the worst one, I think, in Eastern Europe burnt down. So it had these posters up across it saying the worst nightclub in Europe, and it was brilliantly bad. Dominic Cummings once worked as a bouncer in Clute nightclub.
It's terrifying.
But I am distraught to learn this is yet another institution, British institution, that has closed its doors in the last 12 months.
Now, what is it about young people these days that they're not willing to, you know, get dressed, have a few drinks, head out to the nightclub, see what the night holds? You know, maybe you'd meet a new boyfriend, a new girlfriend, have fun with your friends. Are we just not into that anymore?
Are we too puritanical or too afraid? Do we not want to meet people? Are we too... I read a report a couple of weeks ago that said people think it's rude to ask people out on dates in person, and that the only acceptable way to ask someone out on a date now, this is for Generation Z, is through a dating app. And anything else is seen as creepy or overbearing or non-consensual. And I wonder if people are scared of nightclubs now because it might be seen to, if you try and kiss someone, is that okay? Is that not okay? I mean, are these some of the fears that now people have?
Well, I mean, I was reading also statistics that say younger people aren't, you know, getting amorous as much as previous generations. Could that have something to do with it? They don't actually speak to each other unless it's over an app. You're probably talking on an app for about 6 months, never actually meeting the person you're talking to. I mean, there's a fine line, isn't there? You don't want someone creepy coming up to you and demanding to take you on a date. But on the other hand, it's quite nice. It's quite flattering to be asked out on a date in real life.
But if you're a young chap who's just gone to university and hasn't had any experience of this before, and you see all of these news articles about how
men are bad,
power imbalances, all the rest of it, I can very easily see how young men today would just not want to ask anyone out at all for fear of being accused of anything.
Yeah, are there any nightclubs you at home used to frequent that have closed down or are still going? Let us know, gbnews.com/your say. You know, should we be sad about this? Anyway, it's your headlines with Sam.
Very good afternoon to you. It is just after 2 o'clock, and the top story this afternoon: child serial killer Lucy Letby has lost her High Court bid to challenge her conviction for the attempted murder of a baby girl this afternoon. The 34-year-old, who was found guilty of attempting to kill a newborn known as Child K, was seeking permission to appeal against the conviction, claiming media coverage had led to overwhelming prejudice, according to her lawyer. However, 3 senior judges in London rejected that application. The nurse is already serving 14 whole life orders for the murders of 7 babies and the attempted murders of 6 others. Today's ruling marks her second unsuccessful appeal attempt, following a similar dismissal in May regarding her earlier convictions. A 60-year-old woman has been released now under investigation after her arrest yesterday over the deaths of 3 residents at Gainsborough Care Home in Swanage. She was detained last night in Dorset on suspicion of manslaughter, with police exploring carbon monoxide poisoning as a possible line of inquiry. The victims, 2 men aged 74 and 91 and an 86-year-old woman, were found dead on Wednesday, and their deaths are currently being treated as unexplained. The government's confirmed that a ban on disposable vapes will start from June 2025, amid concerns that their impact is on children's health. The announcement comes as 5 million single-use vapes are discarded each week, with their use growing over 400% from 2012 to 2023. However, critics claim the move will drive illegal sales, with the Vaping Industry Association warning there'll be a black market surge. GB News can reveal an imminent rise in Channel migrant crossings, with the numbers expected to exceed last year's total within just the next 48 hours. At least 400 migrants are anticipated to have made the journey by the end of today, following 5 boat arrivals this morning carrying over 250 people into the Dover Border Processing Centre. A further 3 small boats were seen heading towards UK waters this lunchtime, taking the number of arrivals so far this year to more than 29,000. The figure for small boat migrants last year was 29,437. It comes as reckless people smuggling operations have already resulted in nearly 50 deaths this year. Sir Keir Starmer has been told by Commonwealth leaders he must come to the table at their summit in Samoa to discuss reparations for what they have described as the ill effects of slavery. Caribbean countries have been pressing for reparations, with a report last year estimating the UK owes over £18 trillion. The Bahamas Foreign Minister says justice is about more than money. It's about addressing the lasting impact of slavery. However, Downing Street says the issue isn't on the official agenda. Meanwhile, King Charles has also been attending the summit, which continues tomorrow. Shoplifting offences in England and in Wales have hit a 20-year high, with nearly 470,000 incidents recorded by police in the year to June. That's a 29% jump from last year, according to the ONS. The rise also follows major retailers warning of the growing cost of theft and violence towards shop workers. In response, the government says it plans to make assaulting a shop worker a specific criminal offence. Retailers are hopeful that the new measures announced in the King's speech will help police to prosecute offenders more effectively. Bereaved families of those who died in the infected blood scandal are now eligible for compensation after decades of waiting. The government is offering an interim payment of £100,000, but critics say the system is fiendishly complicated and legal assistance may be needed. More than 30,000 people were infected with hepatitis C, HIV and other viruses during NHS blood transfusions between the 1970s and 1990s, with 3,000 losing their lives. Campaigners have welcomed the announcement of payments, but demand more clarity on the full compensation scheme. Scotland's National Rape Crisis charity is facing turmoil after one of its biggest support centres has cut ties over a row about gender and women-only spaces. Glasgow and Clyde Rape Crisis Centre says it is splitting from Rape Crisis Scotland because their priorities, they say, clash over single-sex services, which Glasgow insists are crucial for survivors of sexual trauma. It follows an independent review that found Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre failed to provide women-only spaces for 16 months, leading to the resignation of its chief executive. And just before I go, an update on the situation in Gaza. 16 people, including 7 children, we now understand, have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a school in Gaza. That's according to local officials there. The school in the Nasserat refugee camp was being used as a shelter for displaced families when that strike hit. In the last few minutes, we have heard confirmation from the Israeli military saying that they did indeed conduct that airstrike on the school, with the IDF saying that the air forces were targeting Hamas terrorists. They have also added that the centre was previously serving as a school, but the IDF say it was then being used as a Hamas centre to plan and execute terrorist attacks. That's the latest from the newsroom for now. Your next update in around half an hour.
Well, good afternoon, Britain. It's 9 minutes past 2, and Commonwealth heads of government are set to defy the UK. They're demanding slavery reparations at a leaders' summit today.
Well, the Prime Minister insists calls for reparations are not on the meeting's agenda, saying he'd rather focus on current challenges the countries are facing, such as climate change.
But reports suggest reparations are very much on the draft communique, and Bahamian Foreign Affairs Minister Frederick Mitchell says it is only a matter of time before Sir Keir changes his position.
It seems unusual to us because you've got the Labour Party in power, and this, we thought, was something that the Conservative Party in the UK would be the progenitor of, and that Labour would certainly change its position on this. And particularly since you have an Afro-British man as the Foreign Secretary, to put him in a position where he's advancing a position that no reparations, no discussion on reparations. So I think A very frank conversation has to be had on this. Given Sakhar's work before he became prime minister, given Mr. Lamy's position before he got this job that he has now, they bring their individual consciences to this job, and I think eventually they'll come around to the position.
So could reparations now be on the cards? Could the Bahamian foreign minister really be a bit prophetic there? Our political editor Christopher Hope joins us now live from Westminster. Chris, there seems to be suggestions that the UK could actually in the end sign up to this communique.
Hi, Tom. Hi, Emily. Yeah, welcome back to College Green outside Parliament. Well, that's possible. What we have so far is a draft communique and agreed statement from the entire meeting of the heads of government. They're saying here that they're noting calls for discussions on reparatory justice with regards to the transatlantic slave trade. They agree that the time has come for a meaningful, truthful and respectful conversation about a common future together. They also say that they agreed to facilitate further additional research on the transatlantic trade in enslaved Africans and chattel slavery that encourages and supports a conversation and informs the future. Now, that's all just saying, let's look at the issue and maybe put a figure on it, which frankly one is needed because currently the range of idea of reparations far outweighs the size of our economy in this country by 5 or 6 folds. It's anything between £200 million to £17 trillion. And as you were saying there, Tom, it's based on the value of individual slaves back when they were traded plus interest, and so it's a number which no one could afford nowadays, and it's whether this government might be open to a form of words. There's the briefing to the Daily Mail this lunchtime saying there might be a form of words they can agree to which doesn't involve spending money. What I do think is interesting, I think that the way the Labour government has turned its face against this issue completely, saying no, it's not on the agenda, we're looking at the future, doesn't really attempt to understand the concern in some Caribbean countries, some African countries. Maybe a more intelligent way of dealing with the issue will be saying we're listening, it was a dreadful trade, we helped end it as a country, and we'll look at what the language is, but we can't really go there. But rather than saying no and turn their face against it, has allowed our government now to be at odds with what's largely the black Commonwealth, and it does create a kind of almost a racial divide in the Commonwealth, which goes against the point of it. It's meant to be a family of nations. It's not a battleground normally. The last time it became controversial was back in the 80s when South Africa was kicked out because of apartheid, and it hasn't happened since then. The Queen held it together, much out of respect for her. To have this happen in the King's first Commonwealth heads of government, the first meaningful one overseas, is a problem, and arguably Labour could have avoided this had they been more delicate at the beginning.
That's interesting. That's an interesting perspective. I wonder if they were to cede on language, though, that would be seen as a weakness, and that actually some of those Commonwealth nations might push harder.
Yes, possibly. I mean, we heard earlier from Nigel Farage on your programme, and he was saying, no, don't even go there. You open the door a bit and everyone will come in with all sorts of demands. Nigel Farage talked, didn't he, about the Catholics and other communities who had a hard time in the past, a very hard time. Of course, slavery is the worst you can imagine for anybody. But, I mean, he says it will open up the floodgates to other grievances, other money required from other communities. And where do you stop is his point, which certainly is a position that the government might take. But I just wonder whether showing they're listening to the idea, or they're not adopting it, may have helped them. I mean, you can't really blame these countries. The Barbadian foreign minister there, Frederick Mitchell, he's talking about the past of David Lammy, saying apologies aren't enough, it's time for reparations, looking at Sir Keir Starmer's history as a human rights lawyer, wondering why that might open the door to them. They're looking at the change of government here and taking an opportunity to try and drive home an issue. This government may want to think about how it describes aid money and say, well, there's aid money, we're helping developed nations. Is that part of a degree of reparation in there? I don't know, that could be an argument they might try and make. But to say, no, we're not going to talk about it, has risked putting Sir Keir Starmer against the family of nations out in Samoa, and that was something they could have avoided, but they haven't.
It is just the most stunning diplomatic breakdown. Just before we go, Chris, I want to ask you, do you get the sense that the UK seems weaker on the world stage today? The sense that these countries feel able to make these demands of the United Kingdom, the fact that the UK just gave away 10% of our entire exclusive economic zone because of the Chagos Island giveaway. Do you have this sense that perhaps people think the UK is now easier to take advantage of?
That's certainly a risk of any new government, and I do think Sir Keir Starmer has had a few missteps. He was asked by my colleague Catherine Forster in that press conference if the Falklands and Gibraltar were safe after the UK decided to hand over the Chagos Islands, of course, to Mauritius. And he took 5 days until that Prime Minister's questions, I think it was last week, when he said the Falklands is British and will remain so. I just wonder why they're kind of slow off the mark, because the way the world works, other leaders look at the change here and they're just trying to test out where the UK stands on certain issues. And that's why this government's being tested now on the issue of slavery reparations, not least because what David Lammy said in the past. He said it at the UN. He said his forebears were taken away at gunpoint in shackles in Africa. It's a massively personal issue for him. So he's talking about it, and why wouldn't they try and address that with demands? I think the issue of being strong on a world stage hasn't yet been gripped by this government.
But Chris, again, you raise what a brilliant issue that is. David Lammy was born in this country. There are millions of people in this country who are descended from people who came from these Commonwealth countries. Are we going to tax them to pay those countries? I mean, it all breaks down with the interconnected world we have today. But Christopher Hope, thank you so much for joining us live there from Westminster.
I just wish our leaders, whatever colour, whatever party, would just stand up and say, you know what, we are acting in our national interest. That is what we're going to do. We're going to stand up for the interests of the people we have been elected by, and that's that.
Well, speaking of our national interests, here's one for you. UK authorities are preparing for a fresh surge in Channel migrant crossings today, with numbers arriving expected to surpass the figure for the whole of last year within 48 hours.
Yes, at least 400 migrants are expected to have crossed the English Channel by the end of today as well. So GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White joins us now. So it's October the 24th today. Within 48 hours, we will probably have superseded that figure for the whole year last year.
Yeah, most definitely. Sources telling us that we are likely to surpass that total for the whole of last year within 48 hours, because the surge that you spoke about is underway. 400 have crossed so far today, we believe, and that follows 292 who crossed yesterday, 150 odd the day before. It's just building up all of the time. We're now at over 29,000, so we're just a few hundred away from where we were for the total of last year at 29,437. And given that conditions in the Channel are just about passable, that's enough for these people smugglers to push their boats out. They're taking more and more risk because they realise as we get into the winter months, things do slow down. There are not as many clear days to be able to cross the Channel, so they're pushing these boats out at any given opportunity. And in the Channel today, although 400 odd have come across, many more actually attempted the crossing, but those boats were forced to turn back after getting into difficulties because it's pretty choppy and windy out there in the Channel at the moment. But make no mistakes, this is a grim milestone for the Starmer government. They came into power promising that they would smash the gangs, stop the trade in people across the English Channel to the UK, and far from stopping it in the 3.5 months that they've been in power, it is actually ahead quite significantly of where we were at this point last year.
29,000 likely today, 29,437 for the whole of last year. I mean, it is staggering given we're only in October. We've still got more than 2 months of this year to go. At what sort of level do you think the total number of this year will get to? How much higher will it be than last year?
Well, I think we're looking at 35,000 as a very safe estimate, but I think it probably is going to be more than that, because really, if you get a good day, and not even a good day, but a passable day like today, we're talking 400. So it only needs a couple of days, and, you know, you're the better part of 1,000 who've crossed already. So that number's going to tick up, even if we get, you know, only 2 or 3 weeks of what they would claim to be good weather. That's more than enough to push that figure up by another 5 or 10,000. And that's difficult territory, as I say, for this government that has set up this Border Security Command. The avowed aim is to go after the gangs, to smash them and to stop the continuation of these boats across the Channel. But that takes time. You have to deal with other law enforcement agencies around the globe. You have to carry out an investigation. Investigations don't just happen overnight and then you have a conclusion. They're often months, sometimes years in gestation before you get to the point where you can make arrests and take a criminal organisation out of the picture. And because it is a lucrative multi-billion-pound international trade, there will be plenty of other organised criminal groups ready and willing to step in the second one particular organisation is taken out of the loop.
So it may take years to smash one gang.
If
in the
we ever,
meantime, another gang has formed.
If we ever manage to smash it, it's just many people have equated it to the drugs trade. We've never been able, in all of the years of devoting many, many millions of pounds and thousands of law enforcement officers across the globe to deal with the drugs trade, we've never been able to smash that at all.
The market always beats the state. Mark White, thank you so much for joining us and talking through these stunning numbers.
Yes, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. We've got lots more coming up on today's show. Do you think that we should tax larger people more, tax those junk foods that we all like eating, or is Ozempic the answer? Apparently lots of lords want more taxes on unhealthy food.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
You know, is the fact that electric blanket sales going up actually a good thing? This means that people are switched on to the problems that the winter might hold, that they might have some defence against it, or is it a real indictment of a Labour government that they aren't going to be able to, you know, support elderly people in their hour of need?
Good morning, by the way.
Morning.
I think the sale of electric blankets may well be because we've had this cold snap because of the Arctic weather coming in from the north. However, I think it's an absolute reality that, as your clip said, that over 800,000 elderly people who are eligible for the winter fuel allowance, who can get pension credits, are struggling to apply. And so what is absolutely essential at the moment is that all of those older people who are eligible for pension credits do apply and do get what's owed to them. The benefits are owed to them. And the average that people will get through pension credits is about £78 a week. So that's definitely going to make a massive difference to people who are really struggling.
What can organisations like yours do to encourage people to, I guess, educate themselves on technology and make that first step into the digital world, which is very intimidating at times?
Absolutely, and that's what we do at Good Things Foundation. So we're a national charity. We work all across the whole of the UK. And in your clip there, you had Links Digital, and they're a member of what we call the National Digital Inclusion Network, which is a network of local charities, small local community organisations, food banks, job centres, old people's clubs. So anyone, any organisation at that local level.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is the nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, welcome back. This is Good Afternoon Britain. It's now 2:26. Now, a House of Lords report has suggested that the government should focus on taxing junk food instead of relying on Ozempic to solve the UK's obesity crisis.
Well, the report says that food companies should be banned from advertising unhealthy, high-calorie foods to address a public health emergency. It also suggests that instead of depending on weight loss injections like Ozempic, the government should improve the food system, whatever that means.
That's a big task.
Improve the food system.
No, I don't know either. We can only grow vegetables, so I don't know. Joining us now to discuss this is director at All About Obesity, Sarah LeBrock. Sarah, thank you very much indeed for joining us. What do you make of this? It seems whenever politicians get together, they always seem to come up with the idea of taxing things they don't like. Is that really the answer?
I don't think there is an answer. I think this is the problem. I think when it comes to obesity, we're looking for like a quick fix and a solution. And the problem is that there isn't going to be a one. So I think what we need to do is focus on the fact that we do have a world that we live in, our environment, that is promoting unhealthy food. It's everywhere. And we need to start looking at kind of like, can we improve that? Can we change the environment that we live in? And I think, like you said just at the beginning, it's kind of like, it is a hard task. But I think if we can start putting pressure on the food companies to start doing things slightly differently, so by changing kind of food formulation and by taxing certain foods, then they know that people potentially won't consume them quite the same, and therefore potentially will need to start creating healthier versions or healthier foods. So I do think that this is a positive step forward to some extent in changing the food environment. But what I don't agree with is it kind of being, do we do this or do we treat people with the weight loss medications? Because what we need to be doing is both. Fundamentally, we need to be treating people, but we also need to be enabling them to live in a healthy food environment. And at the moment, I suppose it's a case of if we treat people with these medications and then throw them back into the food environment that we have right now, which is very unhealthy, is that kind of just a waste of time? To some extent, a little bit, yes. So actually, we need to do the both of them together. And I think that's kind of how we need to be looking at this.
Hang on, Sarah. I live in the same food environment, I think, than everyone else. I can go to the multiple fast food chains that are on my way home from work, and I can buy a burger for £6, or I could buy a bag of carrots for 17p. I mean, the financial incentives are already there.
We all know you've got a big packet of jammy Dodgers right by you. You are genetically predispositioned to be slim.
It's much cheaper.
You will always be slim, Tom.
Than it is cheap to eat. It's already more expensive to buy foods that are bad for you.
Well, you're talking about the environment you live in. So yes, for you, that's a simple thing to do. But what we know is in some of the areas where there's the highest levels of deprivation and therefore highest levels of obesity, is that people haven't got access to carrots at 17p, like you're saying. Like in some areas, literally the only shops that they have in a locality are these kind of like ultra processed food where it's all frozen, you stick it in the microwave. They don't sell fresh fruit and veg, and people don't have access to transport potentially, so they actually have to just survive in the environment around them. And if they can't get access to the 17p carrots, which a lot of them can't, then they have to eat what they eat.
Sarah,
you know?
I wonder how much obesity is linked to mental health, or if it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I mean, you know, it's easy to be judgmental about people who have packed on the pounds, but usually there's something behind it. Sometimes something bad could have happened in their life, and food is the way they you know, get through it, or the way they comfort themselves. How do you deal with those issues? Because creating a better food environment or banning junk food advertisements isn't going to, you know, help people who may be struggling.
No, 100%. And that's why I always say we need like a whole systems approach to this. So we need to look at the food environment. We need to look at the psychological support for people. We need to look at treatment. We need to look at the genetics. We need to look at education. You know, it's a whole systems approach here. So what we need to be doing is working on all of it, not just one little bits and pieces. And this is what kind of makes me kind of get quite frustrated, is that we seem to pick up at the moment. It's all been weight loss medications. Now we're talking about food environment. You know, where are we talking about psychological support, like you say? Because for some people, it will be that there's some sort of psychological underlying thing going on that they need support with. And at the moment, we have very limited access to that. So we need to look at obesity as a chronic condition. And in order to treat a chronic condition, it's very complex. It's not simple. And at the moment, we keep looking, like I said at the beginning, for a quick fix. There is no quick fix to the obesity scenario.
But there is. I mean, in the last couple of years, we've discovered basically a miracle drug that can reduce people's appetite, controls people's appetite in clinically controlled studies, more than any sort of evidence we have over whether ad bans work or rearranging supermarkets work or taxing foods work. There is not any great deal of rigorous evidence behind all of these societal interventions that governments keep trying to varying degrees of success or unsuccess around the world. There is no clear evidence on those sorts of interventions. Indeed, when London started banning fast food ads on TfL, actually compared to the rest of the country, obesity went up. I mean, but we do have this jab that clearly reduces obesity. That's something that's concrete. Why are we treating all these other things that are not so concrete as if they're on the same level?
I think, I'm a massive advocate for the weight loss medication, so please don't think that I'm not. I absolutely am. I think the problem we have is if we treat people with the medications and then they can't get access to healthy foods in order to support them with their nutrition, then you're kind of like causing more issues there to some extent. So we need to work on all of those situations, not just treatment or food environment. It has to be across the board. Yeah. And I think that's where we need to look at this. So I agree with you, there might not be the evidence, but the evidence, I suppose, is over the past 50 years that the levels of obesity have risen. And that is because the societal situation has changed and the environment's changed. Yeah. The genetic element hasn't, as in we've always got more people predisposed to obesity than not. What has changed is that obesogenic environment that we live in. So
and our lives have changed so much. People working from home, not moving their bodies. Sarah LeBrock, thank you very much, director at All About Obesity. Tom, I know you're such an advocate of these weight loss jabs, and yes, for some people they are absolutely fantastic. But is it something you can really be on for your entire life? Because there are, when people come off it, they then pile on the pounds again.
Not necessarily. I've got a friend.
And for a lot of people, it makes them sick or affects their mental health.
I've got a friend who went on one of these drugs for about 2 months, got off the drug, and actually, because they got into this new routine of eating less, hasn't needed to be on it for 6 months and is still a lot skinnier than they were before. So sometimes it's just that kickstart that is necessary. But I want to come back to what you said earlier.
A kickstart is what people need,
Yes, I think that perhaps I'm genetically more likely to be full sooner. Fine, completely accept that. It might be easier for me to eat less food than it is for other people. But the point about these fat jabs is that gives them that option as well. The drug behind it, semaglutide.
Yeah, but you weren't talking about Ozempic when you were saying that. You were making the point, carrots are cheaper than a burger. Yes, that's fine, but you do eat junk food. And
I also went to the gym for an hour and a half yesterday.
Yeah, but you can gym all you like, but it won't, make up for a poor diet.
Calories in, calories out. That's all it is.
You have to gym for a long time to get rid of those jammy dodgers. Anyway, this is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Lots more coming up on today's show. Very sadly, we're going to be discussing the death of Jeff Capes, an absolute strongman and legend. That's after the news headlines.
Very good afternoon. While Tom and Emily continue their debate over what to eat for lunch, let's turn to the top stories this hour. And child serial killer Lucy Letby has lost her High Court bid to challenge her conviction for the attempted murder of a baby girl. The 34-year-old was found guilty of attempting to kill a newborn known as Child K and was seeking permission to appeal against that conviction, claiming media coverage had led to overwhelming prejudice. However, 3 senior judges in London rejected her application. The nurse is already serving 14 whole-life orders for the murders of 7 babies and the attempted murders of 6 others. Today's ruling marks her second unsuccessful appeal attempt following a similar dismissal in May regarding her earlier convictions. A 60-year-old woman has now been released under investigation after her arrest over the deaths of 3 residents at Gainsborough Care Home in Swanage. She was detained last night in Dorset on suspicion of manslaughter, with police there exploring carbon monoxide poisoning as a possible line of inquiry. The victims, 2 men aged 74 and 91 and an 86-year-old woman, were found dead on Wednesday, and their deaths are currently being treated as unexplained. The government has confirmed a ban on disposable vapes starting from June 2025 amid concerns about their impact on children's health. The announcement comes as 5 million single-use vapes are discarded each week, with their use growing over 400% from 2012 to 2023. The critics claim the move will only drive illegal sales, with the Vaping Industry Association warning there'll be a black market surge. And GB News can reveal an imminent rise in Channel migrant crossings, with numbers expected to exceed last year's total within just 48 hours. At least 400 migrants are anticipated to have made the journey by the end of today. That follows 5 boats arriving this morning carrying over 250 people. A further 3 boats were also seen heading towards UK waters this lunchtime, taking the number of arrivals so far this year to more than 29,000. The total figure for small boat migrants over the whole of 2023 was 29,437. It comes as reckless people smuggling operations have already resulted in nearly 50 deaths this year. That's it from me for now. I've been told to smile, so there you go. Sophia Wensler will have your next update in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Hi there, welcome along to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Dry for most of us today, but increasingly cloudy in the west, with some rain turning up later. There's a slow-moving weather front out to the west. Ahead of it, a mild southerly airflow and increasingly cloudy as that weather front approaches, but it takes most of the day to bring its rain in. Having said that, the Outer Hebrides seeing some outbreaks of rain during the afternoon, and the cloud thick enough to give a few spots elsewhere in the west. But the best of the sunshine will be through the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast. Just some patchy cloud here and feeling very mild, 16 to 18 Celsius, 14 to 15 further north. But it's towards the northwest where we see the wind strengthen at times, especially western Scotland. It will be blustery through the afternoon, and we've got that rain persisting through Lewis and Harris and heading into the west of Scotland, or the rest of western Scotland, I should say, into the evening. Northern Ireland just seeing that rain fringe upon western parts as we go through the evening, but parts of North Wales, Northern England, the North Midlands, still enjoying some clear spells before the cloud does thicken overnight. The cloud will lower overnight across the Midlands, East Anglia and the southeast to give some fog in places by dawn, but in the west, well, that's when the rain finally moves in. It's going to be heavy and at times persistent across Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest during the early hours. Could cause some issues by dawn in 1 or 2 spots, but it's drier towards the east, albeit fairly gloomy as we start off Friday. It is a mild start, but with extensive cloud cover, it's not going to be very pleasant first thing. And we've got the rain moving through Wales into the Midlands during the early afternoon, albeit petering out and turning more showery as the day progresses. Blustery in the southwest and less mild, staying mild and mostly dry in the north and east.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm John Vincent. Queues on the M8 westbound in Glasgow is partially blocked for an accident from junction 15 Townhead heading towards 16 Craig Hall. Problems on the M62 in West Yorkshire. Firstly, westbound, the exit slip road is partially blocked at junction 26 Chain Bar, and eastbound there's a lane closed for emergency repairs at junction 25 Brighouse. Long delays on the M50 eastbound in Gloucestershire. There's a lane closed for an accident between junction 2 Ledbury and 1 for Tewkesbury. Delays on the M11 southbound in Essex. There's a lane blocked on the exit slip road for an accident at junction 8 Bishop Stortford. And we're seeing slow traffic on the M1 southbound in Northamptonshire due to an earlier broken down vehicle between junction 17, the M45 and 16 for Daventry. And that's the latest traffic and travel news.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Right, welcome back.
We're obviously in sync today.
We're so in tune.
Yeah. Well, it's 20 to 3, and Ben Leo is coming up next. Much more coming up on today's show, of course. But Ben, you're standing in for Martin.
I am. I have been all week. I still haven't heard how his holiday is going, but I trust it's all well. I noticed he was tweeting, though. He's been getting involved in politics, so not much of a holiday, Martin. Put the phone down.
Classic Martin.
It says, you know, what are we teaching the younger generation when we're fixated on our phones? I wanted to know, because we were talking about nightclubs a little bit earlier and how, you know, potentially they're going to go extinct. And I wondered, Ben, because now you're a family man, you've got 2 young children, you're married, but did you used to be a bit of a party goer? I've heard things.
I thought you were calling me a party girl then.
Yeah, or a party girl.
I did infamously, I've said it a couple of times on this channel, I did a season in Ibiza when I was 17.
Goodness
18.
me.
Amazing.
That was interesting. I don't think we should divulge much more than that.
I think we can let the audience's minds run wild as to your entire season.
But it is sad about nightclubs. The thing now is, as I'm older, I'm mid-30s, I couldn't think of anything worse than going out to a nightclub. But I look at videos now of DJs playing gigs, even Angela Rayner in Ibiza, when she was behind the DJ booth.
Yeah.
Everybody is standing in the crowd with their phones just recording, and I just think...
Live in the moment.
The love of your life could have just walked past. I mean, Catherine got in touch. She said, my mum met my dad in the Hammersmith Palais.
Yeah.
I used to frequent there too. It's been shut for a long time, though. You know, not enough people.
And I used to go to Ministry of Sound in Elephant and Castle quite a lot, which at one point was being touted for developments into flats. I think Boris Johnson, back in the day, played a big part in saving it. So, yeah, very sad.
What else have you got for us?
We have, big guest. Richard Tice is coming in to talk about the defections or possible defections of Tory councillors. I mean, I think Labour lost... Was it 4 or 5 council seats at the start of this month?
Yeah, in by-elections.
In my neck of the woods. Miriam Cates is with me as well. She's down the line talking about this Mermaids trans charity development. They've been slammed by the charity watchdog. I mean, lots of people are saying they should be shut down by now, but they were slammed for promoting puberty blockers and giving a pretty biased opinion on their use.
And chest binders, right? To children as young as 13. Shocking stuff. I'm looking forward to your show. Ben,
Thank you,
have
me
an
too.
absolutely cracking one. And we'll find out how Martin's holiday's going for you at home.
I suppose it's going quite well if he isn't texting any of us about it.
That's
He's
true.
having some fun.
Maybe he's watching. Hi, Martin.
But in other news, Jeff Capes, the British shot put record holder and 2-time world's strongest man, has sadly died, aged 75.
Yes, he competed for Team GB at 3 Olympic Games, won 2 Commonwealth titles and was recognised in the England Athletics Hall of Fame.
Well, we're now joined by tournament director and former competitor of the world's strongest man, Darren Sadler. Darren, a sad day.
Yeah, it's a really sad day for the strength community. I think in every sport you've got a forerunner that sets the bar for the people that are coming up, and Jeff was certainly that guy in British strength sports, and he'll be missed. And you know, he gets talked about a lot as a legend anyway. And the strongman community is now out just saying how much they're going to miss him.
Darren, what's a day in the life like for someone who competes in these strongest man competition? I mean, it's something that most ordinary people couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's changed a lot in recent years. When Jeff was competing years ago, a lot of the guys came from powerlifting or bodybuilding, or Jeff obviously came from throwing. He was a shot putter. Whereas nowadays the guys are getting straight into strongman at a young age. So yeah, it's a lot of food, a hell of a lot of training, a lot of recovery. It's definitely a full-time job now.
And what made Jeff such a trailblazer in this sport?
Well, he was the first guy from the UK to win World's Strongest Man. And a few people followed behind him. We had Jamie Reeves, we had Gary Taylor, and we also had Eddie Hall more recently. But I think he was the first guy to do it. He won it twice, which not many people have done that. And he just was such a big guy as well. He was a huge guy, a gentle giant. Everyone seemed to like him.
Yeah, a big personality. Darren, we were talking about food and the obesity problem we have in this country, but eating is, a sport in itself if you want to be the strongest man, isn't it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's very important. These guys eat a lot of food, and like you were saying earlier, it's calories in, calories out. But when these guys are pulling trucks and lifting Atlas stones, it's a huge exertion. So they have to be, full of calories all the time.
Just piling it in. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, Darren, what's the strangest thing you've ever lifted or pulled?
I mean, we try and make it a bit quirky, so we pull trains and planes and all that sort of thing. But yeah, things like that. There's some things that look unbelievable, really, and that's getting the imagination of the people at home that are watching. Like I say, it's evolved over the years, but we try and keep it all interesting. And make things look as heavy as possible.
It's all a part of the spectacle. Darren Sadler, former competitor of World's Strongest Man, appreciate your time this afternoon.
I mean, Jeff Capes, he was a childhood hero for so many people. I imagine he inspired many people around the world to get into the sport.
It inspired many people to dislocate shoulders trying to pull their cars and
I used to watch all this stuff. I used to be fascinated by it. I also used to watch things like Gladiators,
Really?
Yeah. I loved it.
I didn't see that side of it.
I love watching people just lifting things.
Emily Carver, we're learning a lot about you today.
Yeah, well, there we go.
This is Good Afternoon Britain on GB News. Now, plenty more coming up on today's show. Of course, we're going to be following this story of Farmageddon. Stay tuned to find out more.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
We shot with the London Eye in the background, so it's quite an iconic shoot to do my cover of the Playboy magazine. So,
and you moved into the mansion for a while. Hugh called you the British Carmen Electra. You were one of his favourites, and it's renowned for its parties, of course. Over there, you must have had a few of those. Must have been wild times.
Fantastic parties, yeah. I mean, I met some incredible people. I will forever respect him and everyone at Playboy for the love and the support.
And you were on giant billboards, you were modelling for Nike, for Reebok, you're earning thousands of pounds a day.
Well...
absolutely like living the dream in terms of a model's lifestyle, and then things began to change.
Well, I've been living in Windsor for 4 years, and I can't get back into Windsor at the moment. The rents have gone ridiculous. I was paying $550 a month, and then the landlord just turned around one day and said I need to be paying $750. And I didn't really have a proper tenancy agreement, and I looked through it and I said, oh, can we get something in writing? And he was like, oh. So in the end, I wrote a tenancy agreement out from off the internet and I got it all signed. But then he went, if you're not going to pay the extra £250 a month, then you're going to have to move out. And I was like, well, you're going to have to give me 4 weeks. I can't just move out. I've got nowhere to go. And I think he thought he could just throw me out there and then... And he said, I've got someone that's going to move in that's going to pay £700-800 a month. So I went and got the 10, and I thought maybe this will be the way I can go for a few months or so, and it was still summer a few months back when I became homeless. So, I got the 10 and I got all the cooking equipment and what have you from the money I got from some of the jobs I did. And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go and be a free spirit for a bit, and I'm gonna have to just do my own thing. And you know what? It was the biggest mental relief to be able to have my own space. I mean, that was so liberating. Absolutely.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Mark Dolan tonight is your weekend dose of news, debate and entertainment. This sounds like a wild conspiracy theory. Don't miss My Big Opinion. Mark meets at My Take at 10. Democracy is a funny old thing. And we don't do boring, not on my watch. I just won't have it. Let's go and get another glass of that bubbly. You've earned it. That's Mark Dolan tonight, Saturday and Sunday, 9 to 11, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, Will, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. It is coming up to 10 to 3, and a farmer has been arrested for hog-tying 2 men he caught trespassing on his land.
Goodness me, Neil Greenwood slung the 17-year-old and the 20-year-old man to his quad bike and drove them 4 miles to a police station. There you go, there's a shot.
I mean, it's pretty impressive to be able to hold down 2 young men.
You had to do
this
that?
farmer being able to tie these people to his quad bike. But this all quickly backfired because Mr. Greenwood, the farmer, yes, the farmer was then arrested by the police for false imprisonment and assault. And we want to know, was this the right way round? Surely it should have been the trespassers who were arrested rather than the farmer.
I mean, he hog-tied them up and put them on the back of his bike.
They were on his land.
OK, well, how far would you go to protect your land? Joining us now to discuss this, or in a little bit, will be Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones. Now, I wonder what Gareth will have to say about this, whether he approves of such behaviour. I mean, this is a big problem, isn't it?
It's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And if you have land that you own, and you have crops that you are trying to cultivate, and then people come storming through them, they have no right to be on your land. I mean, it's as egregious as someone, you know, walking through your front door. I mean, if someone came into your house, you'd have every right to tie them up until the police got there, or hog-tie them to your quad bike.
I mean, I believe that quite a few farmers do allow little sections of their land to be used as walking routes.
Well, they're
and
a
the
public
like.
route.
But there are problems with travellers as well, aren't there?
Yes.
You know, driving their cars through, setting up campsites, doing God knows what.
Setting up campsites, it just sort of rides roughshod over property rights in the sense that anyone owns anything at all. I find it astonishing, actually, how much this is put up with in a country that presumes to have the rule of law.
And I wonder if the reason why he tied them up, put them on his bike, took the law into his own hands is because maybe he's tried in the past to get the police round and they haven't bothered. I mean, because he's described as hog-tying these trespassers to his quad bike like rabbits. And he drove them on the back for 4 miles to the police station, only to be subsequently arrested himself. So
it does seem fairly extreme, but
a little bit
imagine,
extreme, Tom.
In the mind of this farmer, he was doing the right thing. I mean, he wasn't falsely imprisoning
Can we
them.
have the picture back?
He was taking them to the police.
Can we have the picture back? Because come on, you can't do that. I mean, they've got them face down on the bike with their hands tied behind their backs. I mean, they're probably terrified. I mean,
hang on.
They shouldn't have been trespassing, sure,
but... He wasn't going to do this forever, though. He was taking them to the police.
They were not wearing shoes either.
Well, so they can't run away.
Goodness me.
He was taking them to the police. He was clearly thought he was doing the right... If he thought he was doing anything illegal, he wouldn't have turned up to the police station. It's not like he threw these people in a ditch.
I mean, Facebook users have apparently been saying, brilliant, I hope to see more of this in the future. Another said, vigilante justice. Another said, excellent, shame we can't see the faces. So people clearly like the law being taken into other people's hands, clearly.
Hang on. You know, I have a problem with vigilante justice. I don't think that people should take the law into their own.
OK, so you don't approve of this, then, Tom?
But this wasn't vigilante justice.
Well,
he literally took them to a police station.
It looks like it.
That's the opposite of vigilante justice, going to the police.
It looks quite vigilante, doesn't it?
I mean, if he didn't... What else... What should he have done? Say, please, gentlemen, would you wait here while I call the police? I don't think they'd have done that.
I mean, to be honest, I'm not a farmer, so I can't speak with any, knowledge of how many people trespass on your land, how problematic this issue is for people. I'm sure people at home probably have a better idea than I do. But that does look quite extreme, the way they're positioned.
I would like to know the background to this story. I wonder if these particular trespassers were known to the farmer and if this was the 17th time of this happening or whatever else it might have been.
I mean, Ian says, good for the farmer. So there you go, standing up to criminals, he says. Well, should we end things there?
I think we should. It's been a fantastic, rip-roaring show. Thank you so much for joining us for it. And, of course, do not go anywhere, because Ben Leo is up next. He's standing in for Martin Daubney, so stick around for another 3 hours of marvellous television.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to the latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Increasingly cloudy for many of us during the rest of today, with some heavy rain turning up after dark in the west. Meanwhile, it stays drier and clearer to the east as higher pressure slowly pulls away. We've got a southerly airflow. That's a mild direction for the wind, but we're also seeing a steady increase in the cloud coverage across western and later eastern parts of the country. In fact, it turns gloomy in the east, whilst some heavy rain turns up for Northern Ireland, parts of Wales and the southwest during the early hours of Friday. With that rain and the breeze, it's going to stay mild overnight. Temperatures in some places holding up in the teens. But a murky start to the day, a lot of cloud coverage, some mist and hill fog affecting central and southeastern parts of the country. Some breaks in the cloud, most notably towards Cornwall and parts of Devon increasingly. But this area of rain's moving up through parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. Some heavy bursts and some tricky driving conditions first thing, I suspect. Some patchy rain into western Scotland and a lot of cloud and some hill fog, but otherwise actually mostly dry, particularly towards the east, where there will be some cloud breaks. But on the whole, it's a cloudy day on Friday, especially across eastern parts of the country where we saw plenty of sunshine through today. Meanwhile, brighter skies emerge towards the southwest, albeit with a strengthening wind and some heavy showers. A slow-moving area of rain moves up through the Midlands, parts of Wales and Northern Ireland. A mild day, but not quite as mild as today because of the thicker cloud and the increasing breeze across some southwestern parts. In fact, the far southwest could see gusts of 40 miles an hour or so. But into the weekend, for many, it's a dry start with some sunshine around. Outbreaks of rain, though, will increasingly affect northwest Scotland.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day.
This is the final week to grab your chance to win £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway, and you really could be next.
Hi, I'm Angela from Wigan and I won £30,000. Winning the money enabled me to treat my children, which I've not been able to do for a while. And if I can win, anyone can win.
For another chance to win £36,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2, or post your name and number to GB08 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close 5 p.m. this Friday. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice